gavel.
I'd like to call the Ramsey County Budget Committee of the Whole to order. I will start out with just a few comments as we head into the rest of our budget hearings. One thing that I want to start out with is that for people that are listening, and I'll say this at the beginning and probably at the middle and at the end, is if you want more information for the public that's watching or anybody that's watching, you can go to opendata.ramseycounty.us and you can get all of the information about the budget, the proposals that are going forward, how it all fits together. You can go as deep of dive as you want, or you can look at the overview of what is going on. And that includes some of the major changes that the county manager has proposed, specifically transforming systems together and what it really means. And I think that for those that are interested, they should go in there and see what we're really talking about. So the county manager presented the 2020-2021, I have to practice that, budget to the Ramsey County Board on August 6th. And the budget called for a 4.75% levy increase in 2020 and a 4.5% levy increase in 2021. The 2020 budget is proposed at $741.7 million and $763.4 million in 2021. This represents a 0.5% budget increase in 2020 and a 2.9% budget increase in 2021. Obviously well below any cost of living or what you would normally expect, and part of the reason for that is because we're going to be changing and improving how we do our work. The budget hearings on the county manager's proposal began last Tuesday and run through August 29th. At these meetings, the board will review and discuss spending recommendations for each department and service team. You can also, if you just want to go into the budget, and you will get the same data, but you can go into this as well. The detailed budget information and complete budget hearing schedule can be found at www.ramseycounty.us/budget. I believe that's also in the opendata.ramseycounty.us. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for people to get to it wherever they come into the system. One door, right? Okay, the first public hearing will be held on this budget here in the chambers at 10:30 on Thursday, August 29th. Is that right? Is that a Thursday? For some reason I was thinking it was a Tuesday.
August?
29th?
It's a Thursday, I think.
Okay.
I'll double check it while you keep going.
Okay, actually it is. I know that it is. I'm sorry. And it's going to be here. If you would like to speak to the board, you can sign up with the clerk to the board at www.ramseycounty.us/chief clerk, or you can sign up at the meeting. We take people in the order that they have signed up, so if you know you want to, then I would suggest contacting Janet Guthrie. The second public hearing will be held on Monday, November 25th at 6:30 p.m. at the Maplewood Library located at 3025 South Lawn Drive in Maplewood. We also, I should point out, within the website, there are also ways to contact, to put input on the entire budget, which goes to all commissioners. So if you want to send one email as a comment, you know that we will all see it. Or you can also then provide emails to each of the commissioners, however you want to provide input. We want to get it from any way that is convenient for you to get it to us. We really want to hear what people have to say because that's how we make informed decisions. The budget hearing agenda. At the start of each budget hearing, the assigned deputy county manager for the service team will provide an overview of the services provided within the service team. There will also be a review of the major initiatives and changes proposed in the budget. Department directors will present more details for specific department budgets, and after the presentation, I will open the floor for questions and discussion amongst the commissioners. If you have something that is really need to get to right away, you can interrupt, but I would prefer that you wait until we get to the end and we can answer questions. The commissioner addenda, if there are any, will be heard on Tuesday, November 26th. And finally, the budget adoption by the board will occur on Tuesday, December 17th. And again, opendata.ramseycounty.us, and the I will say this at the end as well, as far as when the next meeting is. The next budget hearing, or budget meeting that we are having is on Monday, August 26th, and we will go from 8:30 to 4:30 with a break for lunch. And that will be health and wellness, and that's one of the reasons that it's all day, is because it is about 50% of our budget. With that, let's see here. Now I got to get to the right agenda. Here we go. We will start out with the opening comments by, or the overview, I guess it is. Joanna Berg is the Deputy County Manager, and I see that she has other people up here as well, but if you could give an overview. As far as the pages in the budget book, we have, you will be looking at pages 14 to 15, 40 to 42 if you're trying to follow along, and then the overview is 134 to 152, and you will walk us through that, and then we are going to do something different at this budget hearing, and we're going to carry it forward to the subsequent ones, and that is we're going to have a major changes right after the overview. Deshani is going to be providing the major changes so that we can look for those as we're going through the rest of the budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Joanna Berg, Deputy County Manager for Economic Growth and Community Investment, EGCI. EGCI includes the following departments: Community and Economic Development, Parks and Recreation, Public Works, Property Management, Ramsey County Library, and Workforce Solutions. I'm going to be presenting off of summary material that begins on page 14 in your budget book. I want to begin by thanking the department heads, the EGCI budget leads, and countless other members of the EGCI team, as well as our colleagues in policy and planning and in the finance department for all of the work that went into developing this proposed budget. Across the service team, EGCI has 501.11 full-time equivalents, or FTEs, in 2019. This budget proposes an increase of 4 FTE in 2020 and 1 additional FTE in 2021 for a total of 506.11 FTE. In this budget, we also reallocate 4 vacant and unfunded positions from Workforce Solutions to other EGCI departments to best utilize available resources. As the County Manager highlighted in his budget presentation earlier this month, Ramsey County's vision, mission, and goals serve as the strategic foundation of this budget and of EGCI's 3 strategic service team priority investments: building a 21st century park system, eliminating fines on youth library material, and establishing economic development-based funding. I'm going to speak briefly about each of these items, and department heads will provide more detail in their presentations. First, the 21st century park system. As we discussed in a board workshop last week, Ramsey County's 20th century park system must transform to be responsive to the changing demographics and needs of residents, families, and multi-generational visitors in the 21st century. This budget proposes the first steps of a multi-year strategic evolution, including realigning the golf course portfolio. It proposes significant capital investments in the Goodrich and Manitou Ridge golf courses and the January 2021 closure of the ponds at Battle Creek Golf Course, while continuing to provide value, mid-range, and premium golf options through Ramsey County Parks and Recreation. As we transition to this vision of a dynamic, community-centered park system, we know also that individual parks and recreation sites and programs have robust constituencies, sometimes single strong voices that are adept at amplifying their point of view and advocating for their preferred outcomes. In this budget, we are prioritizing investments within a system-wide approach. And in parallel, we are taking a broad, residence-based approach to community engagement. It's our challenge, and we believe our obligation, to effectively engage with the broader community, especially historically underrepresented communities, to ensure we hear all voices and that our future state is driven by inclusive and authentic community engagement and through a racial equity lens. The second of our 3 service team priority investments is eliminating fines on youth library material. This budget initiative will eliminate late fines for children's and teens material at Ramsey County Library beginning in 2020. Fines have a disproportionate impact on people of color as well as people living in poverty. Youth are the most racially diverse demographic in Ramsey County, and 11% of the youth in suburban Ramsey County are living below the poverty level. The third of our priority investments is establishing economic development-based funding. Last year, the county board identified new priorities around economic development and supported filling the Community and Economic Development Director position, which had been vacant here since 2004. Comprehensive economic development to build prosperity is a 2019 strategic priority, and this proposed budget this proposed strategic investment beginning in 2020 will be used to develop the Ramsey County Economic Development Vision Plan, finance countywide expansion of programs such as Open to Business, and establish a Gateway Revitalization Program. I want to reference also in previous years, Landmark Center has joined us on EGCI Budget Presentation Day. We've made a transition in this budget, and instead we'll be discussing Landmark Center and our other historic buildings with you in a board workshop setting. That workshop is coming up in September, and we look forward to other in-depth board workshop conversations with you this year, including Vadna Sports Center, the turf facility and naming rights, Ramsey County's portfolio of transit projects, a coordinated county board presentation and board workshop highlighting our partnership with Greater MSP and providing updates from our economic development and workforce directors, and Residents First facilities. In many ways, EGCI's success is rooted in the strong connections we maintain and grow with our stakeholders. This includes federal, state, and local partners, as was lauded in last week's presentation on the Gold Line. I want to highlight today the increasing points of engagement and relationship building with the business community through the synergistic leadership of our workforce solutions and economic development directors. This is an area where we acknowledge substantive gaps in our history, and I believe, like me, you are all seeing the value and opportunity in new and rich connections here. We're also proud of the work this team has led and achieved this last year around contracting and workforce inclusion, partnering across the county to develop and execute strategies for this, the most racially and culturally diverse county in the state, to be more intentional and accountable in this work. We recognize also that we have much work to do here. The goal and responsibility to ensure all voices across the community are heard is, of course, not limited to parks, but is shared across EGCI and the county. We're committed to elevating community engagement and racial equity competencies across our team as an integral component of Residents First service delivery. In building this budget, EGCI took a strategic and a service team approach. Department heads collaboratively identified and prioritized budget needs and priorities across the service team. Those priorities included addressing foundational gaps in meeting today's workload, as well as advancing Residents First and racial equity initiatives. You'll hear much more about those in department presentations this afternoon. I want to particularly thank our controller, George Hartgrove, as well as Dan Winnick in property management for the work that they did to lead us through the service team budget process. George joined us when the budget development process was already underway, and it was Dan who initiated and led the heavy lift of carrying a service team budget process in those early days. We literally would not be here today with a service team budget without them. I want to close by saying how proud I am of this team and what a privilege it is to work with these bright, energetic, and transformational leaders. Each of them individually and collectively, they are a force to behold. 4 of 6 of our department heads are presenting their first budgets today. It took some time for us to get this team into place, and I thank each of you for your patience. But as the department budgets are presented today, I believe you will have validated for you many times over that this service team is now executing against the vision of EGCI. And with that, I'm happy to take your questions.
Do you have any questions for Joanna, or would you just like to move on? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you. Then I'll turn it over to Deputy Finance Director Dushani Dai, who will pick up the major changes on page 40 of your budget book.
Yes, thank you.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I will go over the major budget changes in Economic Growth and Community Investments Service Team. EGCI budget makes up 16% of the overall county budget. With that, there are 4 FTE increases proposed in the 2021 budget. Again, the information I'm referencing can be found on pages 40 through 42. Throughout the day, department directors will provide more details, but I will highlight the major changes. Public Works Department added 5 new FTEs. 3 are new and 2 are vacant FTEs transferred from Workforce Solutions. As you're aware, administrative functions of the Regional Rail Authority were moved to Public Works in 2018. Additional staff resources will help advance the work of the 3 transit corridors, Gold Line, Rush Line, and Riverview Corridor in the 2021 budget. $379,000 in new levy was added to the central fleet budget, along with $159,000 in levy to the library to reflect the loss of revenue from youth library fines. Library will also use $225,000 of its fund balance to fund the collections budget. Parks and Recreation Department has budgeted $660,000 of use of fund balance, one-time funding to recover the loss of revenue from Vadnais Sports Center in 2020. Parks and Recreation Department also increased the FTE count by 2. Only 1 is new, and the other is transferred from Workforce Solutions. As a result of the Gulf study, Parks and Recreation is changing the Gulf fee structure to a more flexible pricing model. Closing of the Ponds Golf Course reflects a transfer of 2 FTEs into other areas of Parks and Recreation Department. Property Management Department budget includes a rental rate increase of 50 cents per square foot. In addition, there is a $495,000 use of fund balance to cover maintenance costs. Community Economic Development budget includes a base levy funding of $475,000. Workforce Solutions Department's grant revenues were reduced by $2.6 million to reflect the loss of grant revenues. Budget also includes 4 vacant FTE transfers from Workforce Solutions to other parts of EGCI budget. 2 were transferred to Public Works, 1 to the library, and 1 to Parks and Recreation. That concludes the major changes for EGCI 2021 budget.
These will be detailed in further as we go through each of these budgets, but it was good to kind of get a heads up to what's coming and the major changes, because that's often where the most questions will come. Any questions for Deshani? Thank you. Okay, we will move on then to, let's see, Jill Boldenau from the library, director of the library. The budget can be found on starting on page 154. And Jill,
all right,
welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I am Jill Boldenau, Ramsey County Library Director. I want to begin by thanking the County Board for building our great Ramsey County Library system. And I want to give a special thanks to Commissioner McGuire for serving as the Library Board Liaison and also for serving as a trustee of MELSA, the Metropolitan Library Service Agency. Pardon me. I'd like to also thank County Manager Ryan O'Connor for leading this budget process, and I appreciate the support from finance and other staff along the way. Thanks to Joanna Berg and my Economic Growth and Community Investment Service team for helping us all bring our best ideas forward. I also need to recognize the entire library staff who helped produce this budget and are delivering great service every day. I also want to acknowledge the leadership of the Ramsey County Library Board, and in particular, Sita Li Zhang, our Library Board Chair, who is with us today. And finally, I want to recognize the impact of the Friends of the Ramsey County Libraries and Cindy Cook, the Friends Executive Director, who also is joining us today. The library and all of our communities are stronger because of all of you, so thank you. Our library budget process has been inclusive of many stakeholders, and it has been focused on residents first and racial equity outcomes. As you've heard, overall, the proposed library budget adds 2 additional FTE as of 2020, and the proposed library levy increases by 4.5% in 2020 and by 1% in 2021. So I'll review how we propose to deploy some of those strategic investments that are in the library budget. Excuse me. As you've heard, our first priority is to eliminate library fines on youth materials and do a one-time waive of account charges for youth. We have serious educational achievement gaps, and we cannot afford to block library access for any of our youth. And you've heard about the racial and economic equity components of this policy change with with such a racially diverse demographic and so many of our youth living below poverty level. By eliminating the barrier that library fines pose for youth and their parents in Ramsey County, we will be strongly positioned to support early literacy and academic success for all of our youth. You've heard that this policy change will decrease revenue by $159,000 annually, and this is offset by the library's base budget. Secondly, the budget does support adding 2 essential library FTE, and one of them is a new account clerk who will support the library's accounts payable in a position that is standard across county departments. You've also heard that Workforce Solutions kindly offered to transfer unused FTE, and I want to thank Ling Becker and the service team for making that possible. With that, we were able to achieve one of our goals, which is to add a digital services librarian. Digital literacy is absolutely essential to success. But our community faces disparities in terms of access to technology as well as the skills to use it. So this investment in digital services staff will help us bridge the digital divide. Funding these FTEs, the library will primarily use its existing base budget, though we will also make a modest increase to our vacancy factor as well. Our third investment priority is to sustain a strong library collections budget that meets the needs of our racially diverse community. Our staff are leaders in building a diverse, relevant library collection, and the county's support for that is vital. As you've heard, Deshani gave the overview that we will use $225,000 each year to supplement our collections budget using our fund balance. And our fourth priority is to renovate the library in Maplewood. And even though this is in the capital improvement program budget and not in your operations budget under discussion today, I do want to highlight this priority. The Maplewood Library Service area has the highest percentage of people of color as well as the highest unemployment rate of all of our suburban Ramsey County communities. And it is really urgent to make library improvements there to more equitably serve this community. The library has a $3.7 million project in the proposed capital improvement program budget to achieve those improvements. And the final priority that I'll highlight is supporting Phase 2 IT consolidation. In 2020, the library will begin participating in the county's hardware-software replacement program as well as the voice-over IP program. And the proposed budget adds $200,000 to the library's base budget in order to support these important new IT programs. I just want to acknowledge that community engagement and racial equity have been central to the library's budget development process. We engaged our staff as well as our library board, and we engaged 2,600 community members last fall with a multilingual survey and listening sessions as part of our master planning. And our budget requests reflect what we've heard. These investments in our budget support racial equity and inclusion, and I've spoken to that a bit about how especially the fines policy change seeks to reduce racial and economic disparities, how our digital services staff investment helps us broaden our reach and close gaps in skills and access, and of course maintaining a library collection that represents racial, ethnic, and language diversity is an intentional outcome of this budget. Racial equity as well drives our Maplewood Capital Project in order to raise the quality of the library experience there to be at the level that we offer in all of our communities. Like any department, the library faces challenges and opportunities. Since the last major recession, the library has faced reductions in FTEs and collections funding, And that's why the proposed addition of FTE in this budget is so important. But we're not yet at full strength, with some of our positions still remaining part-time or unfilled. And we do make some tough decisions every day with our collections funding to meet our community's needs. But the opportunities for the library are many. We have strong staff talent. We have robust county and community partnerships. We have a residents first service framework, and we have a master plan that will guide exciting capital and technological improvements in the next biennium and beyond. In short, we're proud to support county goals and enhance equitable residents first services. And I'll just conclude by repeating my thanks to everyone in this room as well as elsewhere who have helped develop and support our budget initiatives. So with that, I'll take any specific questions that you have about the library's budget.
And before I do that, County Manager O'Connor would like to speak to the base plus budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. I just wanted to point out in our lingo, so we're all talking from the same pages. So, for example, on page 154, in your third paragraph, right at the beginning, it says the library's base plus budget also, and then it continues on. I just wanted to clarify what base plus means in the context of our conversations to date. We talked about creating a budget that both dealt with some of the inflationary cost alongside the strategic priority funding. Base plus was the language we used for that inflationary cost management. It was 2.5% that was given to each service team. So that reference is the library's budget from 2019, including an increase of 2.5%, said differently. And I just wanted to make sure that made sense to everybody watching.
So we will find that in each of them. It may not be worded exactly the way, but it's there. Commissioner Carter.
Thank you. I really appreciate the work that you all have done, and particularly the strategic initiative for eliminating youth library fines. It clearly is taking a bite of the apple that we need to be thinking about as we talk here about transforming systems and focusing on racial equity and ensuring that everyone has an opportunity to prosper within Ramsey County. So thank you so much for advancing that and putting it before us as a recommendation. I am curious, because I know that that is a bite of the apple, about the discussions that you all have had with respect to library fine elimination overall, including for adults. You know, we know the difference that just having access to a library can make, being able to be a literate community in terms of advancing our overall prosperity, and also some of the science that's resulted from experiments that have happened in communities such as our St. Paul libraries, who totally eliminated those library fines. As I think about it, their circulation has increased, active users have increased, you know, by almost every measure of good libraries and good service to community. Those are positive outcomes. So I am wondering if you have taken a look at the number of blocked adult users and at what that might mean in terms of an additional bite to this apple and the total elimination of fines and fees, if that hasn't been done, if that is research that can be done and brought before us.
Madam Chair and Commissioner Carter, we are definitely interested in reducing the burden on everyone. And in fact, the policy change this cycle is a follow-up to some work that we did 2 years ago. We review the fines policy every 2 years. And 2 years ago, the Library Board approved several changes across the board with fines that reduced the daily fines as well as the maximum threshold of fines for all ages. Because we were really concerned, especially with certain types of material, that that might be an additional burden for an adult on a low income. And so we did make some changes there. That is one of the reasons why the library's revenue has seen some declines, in addition to the use of e-resources that don't actually carry any fines. But so we did take a strong look at that last cycle and made several changes that we hoped would address the, I guess, extreme cases of burdens on adults as well. I think that we can and should look at what it would look like to take the full bite of that apple and not the youth bite. But I think there are considerations of balancing our budget that come into play, as well as knowing that children in particular have little or no ability sometimes to actually get their material back on time. We can't really sustain that practice of giving them a late fine. Do we feel the same way about adults? We just have a lot of different things to kind of talk about to get to the place where it's clear that for everyone there should be no fines. But I do think we should look at it, and I'm happy to bring any research on that topic for further discussion and further examination.
Thank you. Thank you. Just as a follow-up, I really appreciate that you've been thinking through that and, understanding this is one piece, and it would be helpful for us to know what that burden might be in terms of understanding the number of adult blocked cards and, what that might mean in terms of taking that second big bite. And, I would just simply add that I know we have that challenge, which is a budget challenge. I know that our demographics are such that they may be different than St. Paul's, for example. One of the things that they did find was that they were able actually to save library time. 10% of the librarian time that had been used otherwise in capturing or explaining or negotiating those fines. So as we look at transforming systems, I just want to make sure that we get that information so that we're able to understand what that burden might be for us in terms of costs in the library, but also what the potential for us might be. And we know that those impacts are particularly within those racially concentrated areas. Ours look different, but the burden to those folks, is certainly great. As we think about residents first, I'd love to know what that number is and, how we might solution that. Thank you.
Yes.
On that same note, I guess the other side of this that we need to look at is, one of the reasons that, first of all, I really appreciate the fact that it's youth materials, because that's pretty easily defined. I was wondering how it was going to be as far as kids versus adults and all of that. It's the materials. It's not the age of the person. And so...
The blocked cards would be.
Pardon me?
The blocked cards.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, as far as the adults. But I think that there's another side to this, too, as far as the adults. They can call and extend. They can, and there's no charge for that. You don't pay a fee. You simply make a call, and you can do it, I think, twice. Is that correct?
It is, Madam Chair. I also wanted to mention that one of the things we'll implement with this is more frequent notices going out to let people know in advance before something is coming due, but then after something is overdue, more frequent notices, just so that it's easy to miss one, but we'll send more frequent notices in order to help people avoid the big late fee. We also hope that after we upgrade our online system, we'll be able to have automatic renewals so that we're doing as much as we can to really prevent those little things that slip through the cracks unintentionally that are a burden to people. But if something hasn't been requested by someone else, you can renew it in additional times.
And I think it's a good idea to look forward to to look and see what would it look like with that. But it does mean that those materials aren't available for someone else. And so I think that it's a balance, but looking at all of the figures and, what ends up not coming back at all, because I know that that's an issue, just to make sure that, it sounds to me like the library board is looking at all of that. So I don't have a problem. I think it's a good idea, the elimination of the fines. I think this is a fine place to start. But I want to make sure that we have the whole picture, because adults are supposed to be more responsible. But it doesn't mean that we want to block somebody's card so that they can't have access. And I assume then that, for example, if there wouldn't be a late fee. So if a parent comes in or grandparent or whatever, they take out a child's book. If that doesn't come back, even though it's on the adult's card, there is no late fee, correct?
Madam
Okay.
Chair, that's correct.
Okay.
Yes, the late fee applies to the type of material and how it's defined as either a children's material or teen or adult. So as long as it's children or teen material, anyone who checked it out would not incur the fine.
Good. Okay, and I had something else. Pardon me?
But we will get that information.
Yes, we'll get that information and see what's happening with the library board and their recommendations. But this is a great start. Commissioner McGuire, and then I'd like to come back.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Director Boldenau. I'm always so excited to talk about the library and all the amazing things that you do because, as you mentioned, I'm lucky to be the liaison to the board, so I get to hear firsthand all the amazing work that you and your staff do, and I want to thank you for that and your amazing staff, and also the library board for their great direction. I want to thank Cindy Cook for your great work with our friends of the library and the great help that they give to our libraries. And I want to thank Commissioner Reinhardt for being the alternate on the board so that you can be there when I'm not able to. So we have a great, we're in great support of the work that you do. Just a couple of questions and then a couple of things I just want you to expand on, because one of the things that I'm most proud about with our library system is that you truly are residents first and really looking for ways that you can be a resource for the community. And I think of you as a resource center, not just as a library for books, but as a resource center, because I know that you collaborate with many of our other departments in the work that you do. And I know we had our great workshop today on transforming systems together. And I think you've just already been such a good example of how you cross departments and just really try to be there for the community, because I know you help with elections, you help sign up people for healthcare and your human services, you work with parks, you work with extension. And I just wonder if you want to comment a little further on any of the programs. I just want to highlight all the amazing work that you do. And I know we don't have time for all of it, but if there was anything else you want to just give a shout out to, it is amazing. The sessions that you have, I know you get legacy funding to have great speakers in, and that you really do try to find grant money wherever you can to help with any community programming. And I know you're working on diversity programming because you have a lot of programs that concern that. So if you want to highlight any of those.
Yeah, and I would say that we do it through the partnerships and also the generosity of the Friends and through the Legacy Amendment. But you'll see in our operating budget, we don't have a line item for programs per se. Most of our programs come in because that partner has the program and they want the public venue and they want to engage the public that is naturally spending time in the library. So it's a perfect marriage of our facility and staff and their program. But we're doing amazing things. As you mentioned with elections, we're hosting absentee voting and early voting and same-day voting or election day voting. We have Workforce Solutions coming in and doing programs with us at several of our libraries. We have social workers coming in and helping people get connected to benefits and housing resources and shelter. We've started a new program with public health nurses where we are giving them information about early literacy and our new program that we're promoting called 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten. And so they go out because, again, we're not always connecting to those parents, but they are. So now let's bring our program out through them to families, which is fantastic. So they're getting them excited about joining the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program. So it goes both ways. We are out of the library doing partnerships and utilizing other tracks and resources, and then we're bringing people into the library because what they've got is exactly what our residents need to hear and see.
And so I just really appreciate you highlighting just some of the things that you're working on, and I know that you've really inquired too, like, how can we be part of the prenatal to 3 work? You know, I mean, I know that you're just so willing to be a part of all of the work that we're doing in Ramsey County. So thank you so much for that. And I just have to ask the question, I think I ask it every time, just so that the public can hear that. I think people think that because of the birth of electronic books and books on tape, that maybe our hard-covered books and paperbacks aren't maybe as in demand, and that libraries are maybe not going to be as relevant anymore. And I just think that they're even more relevant now. And if you just want to comment on, you know, that sense that even though maybe books as they were, you know, used before maybe aren't looking the same, that we still need our libraries for all sorts of things.
Oh, absolutely. And the demand for print materials is still very strong, and the square footage that we're setting aside for that in libraries is staying stable, as well as the demand for electronic materials is always moving very quickly up. But as you said, our programs, our meeting rooms are in such demand. We have a huge number of bookings every year from outside people coming in and using our spaces, and having internet, having a computer to access, learning how to use it, bringing your device in and getting some help on how to use it. All of those things are the 21st century uses of libraries, and we have it all, and it's all robustly used. So thank you.
Thank you, and I just appreciate you calling to attention those amazing things that you're doing, and thank you again, and I hope you'll extend to all your staff, and I know many of them are here, our gratitude for all the work you're doing. Thank you.
Well, and it is a very visible example of how the service team approach and working across the service team departments and within the 4 service teams as well. And the library has been doing that for a while, but it's more integrated into how we budget and how we make sure that we're catching people or getting to the people that we need to get to from the avenues that are convenient for them. If you could give me a little more of an overview of the Maplewood Library, the timeline, and maybe just a high level of what is changing.
Madam Chair, so I guess we'll see, based on what is finalized, what the timeline would need to be. I believe in some draft materials I saw there might be funding over the course of the 2 different years of the biennium, so we'd have to sort out, what happens when. But overall, the plan there is not to change the footprint of the building, but and not really to change much of the staff side of the interior, but to really look at relocating items or areas based on age and use, as well as inserting some walls in order to separate sound and in order for people, no matter what they're doing in that library, to have a quality experience and not worry about whether they're getting in the way of someone else. So it's interior work. We're going to make sure there's a lot of glass so that sense of light and modern spaciousness is not disrupted, but sound control and more of the amenities that people need will make that, it'll be a huge improvement. We see that with everything kind of blending together in one big open space, that it's not really serving anyone. And we know exactly how we want to serve kids and how we want to serve teens and how we want to serve people who want a quiet space. So we just need to build that out. So it's kind of a rearrangement and some interior structural elements.
Well, and that was my understanding, and I wanted to make sure that people understood that it's not, it's major work, but it's not a major shift in programming. It's how or where within that shell it is happening. And I do know that almost from day one, the fact that we put the area where more seniors would go to was way at the very end. They're like, okay, what were you thinking there? But it's also about the sound. You're absolutely right. It's a beautiful space, and I think the more windows will make it even more beautiful. Go ahead, County Manager O'Connor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner McGuire, I can't leave without one comment back on before. come on, the stories of the library's death are greatly exaggerated. I mean, we got to quote Mark Twain during the library. I was like almost out of my seat 3 times on that. So I just wanted to give that in there. But I just wanted to highlight the phase 2 IT consolidation piece. This is a significant move after a number of years of conversation. I appreciate that Director Boldenau brought it up earlier, but bringing the library into the ecosystem with the hardware software fund for the rest of the county has not been an easy feat. It's taken a while to do it. Credit to a lot of staff for that. Long term, we believe there's an efficiency and a savings there that benefits a Ramsey County user and taxpayer, and as well as aligning with our systems with our employees. And those are those kind of back end things I think can be missed, but it's many years in the making, and I wanted just to make sure we raise that piece one more time before we left this budget.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
We will now move on to property management. Joanna, did you want to say anything at the beginning of each of these?
No, thank you, Madam Chair. I think we can just transition.
Okay. Okay, Jean Kruger, property management on pages, let's see here, on page 212 is when it starts.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners, County staff. I'm Jean Kruger, Director of Property Management. On behalf of our department, I'm pleased to be here today to share with you a bit about property management and our budget for 2020-2021, again, starting on page 212 of your budget book. I too could not be here to talk about our budget without the support and the commitment of our entire department. We really do build a bottoms-up budget, which means every one of the managers involved in taking care of our portfolio is involved in putting forward their budgets for their facilities in order to build this up. I want to thank all of them for their contribution. This was a lengthy budget process for us, but I think we pulled it off well. And I too want to give a specific call out to Dan Winnick. He really single-handedly pulls it all together for property management, and again was wearing 2 hats to begin with for this budget season, our budget biennium. I too would like to thank the leadership of the EGCI service team. It really was a good environment working together for this first time, going through options, opportunities for strategic initiatives, and coming forward with a collective plan for the service team as well as our individual department budgets. I think an excellent job was done in pulling together a cohesive and integrated biennial budget, keeping our thoughts around the county's mission, vision, and goals. And I thank you, the commissioners and the county staff, finance, et cetera, for your time today, and certainly as we move forward through the budget process. As one of the 2 EGCI directors, our department heads, that has been here before, I did just want to point out that I first appeared before you 2 years ago when I was 2 months on the job. So I was a little more naive than I am now. But the time has flown by. It's been extremely busy, very productive 2 years for our department. As you are no doubt aware, property management manages most of the owned property within the county, excluding that of the Parks and Rec Department, and we administer the real property leases. In the last 2 years, property management assumed the management and budget oversight directly, as Joanna mentioned earlier, for the Landmark Center, and I'm going to refer to it as the barn. And also, we assume the management of the Regional Railroad Authority properties, including Union Depot. And I'm just going to pause there a second to kind of talk a little bit more about that. Previously, you would have heard about the extension barn, and as you heard last week, no doubt, from John Sigfeland, the extension services as a program, as an initiative now are part of John's organization. But from a property management perspective, we do manage the property as the barn. Also, for the regional rail, although property management takes care of the properties of regional rail.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop you because you need to explain for not only commissioners or Commissioner Modis-Castillo, okay, but also for the public what you are referring to as the barn.
It's what am I referring to as the barn?
Okay.
So the county owns literally a barn, which is on the property next to the Ramsey County Care Center, the Parks Admin Building. It is in fact a historic barn. I think we're going to start referring to it as the historic barn. But
Some
it
historic
literally was an operable farm from the beginning and was put on the historic list in the 70s. And right now, the only regular people occupants of the building are the extension services staff from the U of M. And so the split that occurred is the extension services as a program now works closely with John's group, and property management had previously taken care of the barn as a property, but as extension services and the barn, it was a separate budget outside of property management. And now that budget for the property is within property management's budget. Hopefully that
You were
kind
at
of
the Ramsey
cleared it up.
County Fair. Okay, that's
The barn.
the barn.
We just have so many barns in the area.
I know.
Which one we're talking about.
Well, and I'm sure there are other people that are wondering what we were referring to as well.
Right.
Barn at Gibbs Farm.
Yes, we do have more than one barn in Ramsey County. Anyhow, so I'm sorry, I stopped you in the middle of talking about Union Depot.
That's fine, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so again, property management does manage the properties on behalf of the Regional Rail Authority. That includes the various properties that are held for future transit corridors, as well as the Union Depot. Although we manage the properties, the budget for all the regional rail properties is actually within the Public Works budget. And you'll hear more about the budget portion from Ted, who will speak next. But I just wanted to point out that those dollars for those properties are not in the property management budget. Property management also has a responsibility, as of very recently, for the Boys Totem Town property, which again will get confusing that we are providing the oversight of that, but as of right now, dollars for the property as well as programming still continue to reside within corrections. But we are ensuring that that property remains a good asset over the next month's time frame until county determines the future for that site. Likewise, the riverfront properties are within ours to oversee and maintain, again, pending future development. In total, we oversee 30 owned properties, and there are about 24 leases, some of which we are as landlord and some as tenant. As you can see on page 213 of the budget book, our department staffing is currently just over 77 full-time equivalents, and it will remain at that level through 2021. We continue to do more, as I've just mentioned, with the same amount of people. Again, page 222 of the budget book would show you our total expenditures in the proposed budget, and that they will increase from approximately $24.3 million this year to $25.4 million in 2020 and to $25.8 million in 2021. These are increases of 4.5% and 1.7% respectively, both less than what you heard for the overall county increases year over year. And I will speak a little bit more on the makeup of the budget a little later. The two major changes in our 2020-2021 budget, as Dushani mentioned earlier, are summarized on pages 41 and 42, and they have to do with the sources of our funding. As was mentioned, we have been approved to do a 50-cent per square foot increase in our internal rental rate, and that's the rate that we charge the other departments for their use, for their occupancy within our buildings. It funds our operational needs, and it provides a source of funding for capital or building improvements within those properties. The second area of major change in our source of funding again, as mentioned, has to do with us using some fund balance in 2020 and 2021. This will be used to cover some category of maintenance testing on systems that we had previously funded through our building improvements or capital fund. But by making this switch for a couple of years, it allow us to use those building improvement dollars more specifically for true capital improvements as opposed to regular but not annual types of testing and maintenance. For 2020 and 2021, this amount is just under $500,000 that will come again from fund balance. So through the polar vortex to the heat and humidity of summer, our department's focused on providing safe, clean, welcoming, accessible facilities for employees and residents, and ensuring that our properties meet the needs of the county today and for the future. As we worked with EGCI within the EGCI service team in developing this budget, it really became clear that everything we do as a department, we are in line with and striving to achieve the county's strategic priority around residents first, effective, efficient, and accessible operations. Our work continues on this priority, and we're on track to present to the board by year end related to the recommendations on the residents first facilities, and this is related to the facilities of tomorrow for in-person services. This priority builds on the work we completed last year under the Accessible Service Delivery and Facilities Initiative, which, as you recall, included a substantial amount of community engagement. The facility of the future for the in-person services will be accessible, welcoming, and aesthetically pleasing, enhancing the experience for all residents and the employees who serve them. We do recognize that to make an impactful change on our facilities, we need to do more to address the condition and accessibility of the facilities that we have today and will be retaining for the future. We realized that we needed to put forward some major capital requests, and we have done so within the 2020-2021 budget. We have several facilities, such as the Metro Square building, that are in need of and are undergoing some major capital projects. And these type of projects for Metro Square, this year the roof, in the next biennium, hopefully addressing issues with restoring and repairing the entire building envelope, eliminating some age-old and inoperable escalators. These are major projects that would otherwise consume a half or more of our capital improvement dollars, and we are happy to have been able to get some of those big projects on the list for the CIP budget, in addition to our regular funds. Additionally, we have put forward for a major project to help us address additional aspects of welcoming and aesthetically pleasing, again, in the buildings that we will be retaining. The project funds here under the umbrella of Residents First facilities, et cetera, have been put forward for $5 million in funding in 2020 and $2.5 million in 2021. Again, these types of improvements would be used at a number of different facilities to address signage. Where are facilities? How do you get there? Once you're there, how do you navigate within the building? And also to tend to some aesthetics or lack of welcoming, lack of accommodating public-facing areas within the buildings. And these are, again, exclusive of whatever does come forward as far as new resident-facing facilities. As I mentioned previously, our proposed operating budget increases 4.5% first year and 1.7% in 2021. We, like everyone, continue to experience the inflationary costs in pretty much every area, but specifically for us in personnel costs, in utility rates, property insurance, information services, and third-party services, specifically for us in the area of cleaning services and security services, as well as that we have had some additional requests for 7 by 24-hour security in buildings where it had not previously been. Additionally, as our portfolio gets older, there's just more that breaks, there's just more that needs attention, and that's contributing to some cost increase. We have been able to offset some of these increases by reductions in energy usage, so offsetting some of the rate increase by reductions in usage, as well as through some other operational efficiencies that we've been able to achieve. The revenue to support our expenditures is primarily generated, as I mentioned, from the rental that we charge to internal departments, and this accounts for approximately 89% of our expenditure, covers approximately 89%. The additional source of revenue come from some small amount of revenue from third-party or tenants in our buildings, as well as the property tax levy funds the county's contribution to the Landmark Center, and also the small amount of expenditure that occurs on this historic barn. And as I mentioned, for this biennium, we will be using just under $500,000 each year out of our fund balance. In addition to our fiscal accountability, which is our primary topic today, I did want to touch on a couple of other initiatives, or the key initiatives for our department. For the well-being of employees is having a workplace that's welcoming and inclusive, and this benefits us in attracting and retaining employees, which are two key aspects of TARP. This also helps employees be effective and productive, or as productive as possible in meeting the needs of residents. The workplace for county employees can be transformed, as you've undoubtedly witnessed if you have visited the remodeled county manager admin suite here on the second floor. We've undertaken the development of the first ever workplace standards for the county to guide our work in this area in an effective and efficient manner, and to ensure consistency and equity across the county as we look to improve the workplace environment. Trying to get away from the haves and the have-nots, both in the space for employees and in the space where our residents seek their services. Additionally, if through these standards we're able to improve utilization in our facilities, even if we're able to decrease our space requirement by 10%, that would translate to about $3 million in expenditures a year. So it's very important that we move forward with our workplace standards. Also, for the well-being of employees as well as residents, property management focuses on environmental stewardship, and specifically here I'll talk about energy management. Our performance measures come through on pages 220 and 221 in the budget book. And as you can see there, we achieved in 2018 a 10.3% reduction in energy consumption from the prior year. We continue to have these year-over-year reductions, and we are on our way to achieving the target that is set in our county strategic energy plan, which is to achieve a 60% reduction in energy usage by 2040 from the consumption in 2008. So every year, our 5, 6, 7, 8, 10% decreases position us well to achieve that goal. We're also committed to supporting opportunities for our residents. We promote economic growth for small business enterprises, or SBE, in our community, as well as improving outcomes for our workforce. In 2020, property management established goals for directing a portion of our discretionary operational spend to the CERT SBEs, those that are part of the Central Certification Program. And the department has been intentional about this ever since. For 2018, we achieved 19%, just short of our 22% goal, but 19% of our discretionary operational spend on CERT SBEs. Additionally, workforce inclusion goals are in all the property management construction contracts at the 32% minority and 20% women. We have work to do in achieving those goals, but it is our intent to continue to strive towards those in all our contracting. This does remain a focus area for us as we partner with Workforce Solutions and Procurement and elsewhere within the service team to make strides in this area. We're really looking to identify additional SBE vendors, particularly minority SBE vendors. We're reevaluating our procedures, working with procurement to see if we can make it easier for CERT SBEs to do business with the county. And we continue to look for flexibility in construction contracting to hopefully allow us to make greater strides on workforce inclusivity. We continue also to seek ways to improve our department's efficiency and effectiveness through technology and modernization of processes and policies. High on this list is the implementation of the enterprise asset management system within the service team. This will allow us to standardize our approach across our portfolio in preventative maintenance, forecasting, capital planning. Best practices can then be implemented as well across the portfolio. As a department, we're transforming in our role to improve the workplace. And this is about more than the investment in facilities, which we are happy to do, but it's also about the people, the processes, and policies within our department. We're focused on creating a team that's customer focused, and in our case, that's both a focus on the employee and the resident, and also to be collaborative, diverse, and respectful of all, committed to delivering the services we provide. We're addressing our processes and policies for consistency and streamlining, and then distributing that authority to our managers as appropriate. We're challenging ourselves as a department to be proactive rather than reactive in the delivery of services and dedicated to supporting the needs of the departments, employees, and the residents they serve. Thank you for your time today, and I'll entertain any questions you may have.
Commissioner Martis Castillo.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just have two quick questions. On the rental rate increases, is that also applying to the folks that are partners that rent space from us? Are they getting a rental increase as well?
Madam Chair, Commissioner, the true leases or tenants that we have under leases will be governed by the language within their lease.
Okay.
So that would be, I can't tell you off the top of my head, but their rates are set separately from the inter-county rates.
Okay.
If you have any in particular, you'd be happy to look them up and check because there is some variability in them.
Sure, no, that answers my question. And then the other question I have as I'm looking through the binder, it looks like we have an appropriation expenditure for the Landmark Center, over $900,000 annually, but I don't see a revenue stream from the Landmark Center, and most of the others there is. So can you explain that?
Yes, Madam Chair and Commissioner. The Landmark Center, what you see here as an expenditure from the county is our contribution to Minnesota Landmarks for their operation of Landmark Center. So the total cost of Landmark Center is certainly more.
Okay.
And the revenues that they collect are used to offset their costs. And in essence, this is making up the delta.
Got it, thank you.
Commissioner McDonough and then Carter.
Yep. Two things. One, calling out this 10% reduction in space can translate to a $3 million cost savings, which is a pretty big deal, 1.5% on the levy, or, being able to invest. And so to me, that's a really important piece here as we're looking at our facilities and then tying it to, our aging facilities and making investments to keep them, the environment for our employees to be successful and then conducive for the public, but balancing that with, our desire and long-term strategic plan on how we provide services and where and what those facilities look like, I think is going to be a really important balancing act moving forward. And I know you're aware of that, but I just want to call that out here. as we move forward on the strategic facility plan, we're not making investments, a year behind, and all of a sudden we're abandoning those or things are changing. But then, just this recognition of the cost of space, and as we're planning for that strategic facilities plan and how we're allocating space for projects, to me, that's where our pencil really needs to be the sharpest, because once we build it, you can't reduce 10% out of a building and just let it sit empty. You don't get your $3 million back. But those are some of the areas I think that are really going to be really critical here moving forward, that affects the budget for the whole county, but really for the budget for you and the experience our employees and customers get. So I just wanted to acknowledge you calling that out, but reinforcing that moving forward.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
County Manager O'Connor.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McDonough, just one point to that as we get toward the end of the year. It is also why thinking about our long-term flexibility across some of our spaces differently than just the classic own, build, operate perspective is an important conversation for us to have. I have a hard time articulating the workforce in 10 years, let alone 20. And I think for all the reasons we heard today, we should think about what that mix looks like in the current lease rate environment, as well as where locations are available and what ownership looks like. And so while we don't have any answers today, I appreciate you calling that to the forefront and want to acknowledge it'll be a part of that December conversation.
Madam Chair, if I could just.
Yes.
One other area I want to call out too is, you've highlighted the properties that have moved under property management, and, recognize that there's still some opportunity here in properties that you don't manage. And it's not real clear, conversations could happen or nothing that doesn't, I don't see a clear path on some of those properties on very deliberate conversations. But I can remember bringing this up in 03 when there was a lot of properties that weren't under you. And people would say, no, we can't do that. We can't do that one. We can't do this one. This makes more sense to stay in corrections. Or this. Every single time we've made that move, it has actually been for the better. And I would challenge us and you and Joanna and Ryan to just look at those lingering properties. They'll always find reasons why we can't, but there hasn't been a single one that has proven why we can't, and every one of them has actually proven we should have did this sooner, because it just works out much better for our system.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Dunner, I appreciate that, and that is truly a credit to the team, because as I mentioned, we continue to do more with the same amount of people, and that is truly a credit to the people and the efficiencies that we are able to achieve as we've brought additional properties into the portfolio. So thank you.
Good.
Commissioner Carter.
And with an eye toward those efficiencies, I applaud the work that you have been able to do in continuing to gain the year-to-year reductions in energy use across the portfolio of properties that you manage. And, it is clear that as they get older, you do require more attention, and it's probably a lot harder to squeeze blood out of a turnip as you go. So as we think about the strategic facilities plan, I just wanted to ask if you could share any thoughts regarding the risk to that ongoing energy reduction that old buildings, old facilities might present, and whether there is a turning point at which, or a point at which we don't get the returns that we're looking for in terms of those energy and efficiency improvements.
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner Carter, you're very correct there. There is a point of diminishing returns. I'm not sure if it's good or bad that we're not there yet. We still have a fair number of, if you will, facilities with low-hanging fruit where we can make some changes and still affect some significant energy reductions. But at some point, we do get where those investments to achieve every little bit of reduction kind of swing the other way. We're not there yet.
Not there yet.
We still have more work to do, but it is also front and center in our minds and is actually part of the almost final facility energy management policy that, energy and energy savings is got to be a part and parcel of every new building and every new lease so that we don't take our eye off it.
As well as a part of, assessing those buildings overall, not just the new buildings, but the ones that we currently own, and whether or not we can continue to look forward to those kinds of energy efficiency gains.
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner Carter, I don't have the specifics here, but, you know, we are just in the process of having removed 2 enormous boilers out of the Ramsey County Corrections Facility. And I don't have the numbers in front of me, but, you know, in and of itself, some of those types of improvements, you know, have a significant benefit to us. And we do have more of those types of projects to complete.
Appreciate you've got your eyes on it. Thank you.
Well, and I think it's also important, the type of energy, looking at renewables, whether it's solar or wind or geothermal or gasification that we're looking at from solid waste management. All of those things, it's not just how much you're consuming, but what type of energy are you consuming that make a difference on the environment and the bottom line.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner McGuire. Oh, did you? If you had more, go ahead.
No, we'll stay on this track.
Whoever wants to talk. You want to come back, though,
Yeah.
Commissioner Carter? Okay.
Because I'm just going to highlight, because I was going to ask a similar question as Commissioner Carter, just to thank you and you know, support increased work on our energy sustainability and, you know, what we can do for alternative energy and solar and wind and whatever we can do there. I really appreciate that you're working on, you know, having a safe and workable workplace, that you are developing workplace standards. I appreciate all of that. I am curious where our strategic facilities plan is at. If you said it, I missed it. Is it where you did, is it in December that we're getting that, or where are we getting an update on that?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Commissioner McGuire, the work that we're doing in terms of our new, if you will, service delivery facilities is now wrapped into the Residents First Facilities Initiative, and we will be back with the board by year end with our recommendations from the work that we're doing right now.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Commissioner Carter.
Well, thank you. So on a second topic, I want to applaud the work that you are doing specifically in the CERT SBE participation arena. And to the extent that you're achieving improvement, of course, that's laudable. But I just want to point to the page 217, where CERT SBE participation comes up as the topic at the bottom of the page, and to the third sentence, which is that, or which concludes that you are measuring or looking forward to, I should say, understanding, although there is no method of measuring, the lasting impact of this spend on the workforce, and specifically residents of Ramsey County. Residents First, forward-looking, transformative. This is an area of our work where we can know that we, through our actions, can make a difference. As yet, we are not sure what that impact is, what it has been, but we know that it will be as we look attentively at CERT SBA spend, increasing vendors, increasing the amount of our spend. And I just wanted to note that, years ago we wouldn't have seen that kind of sentence there. And we are absolutely looking at the difference that we make in every area as a service provider, as an employer, as a contractor of services. So thank you for that mindful examination of that work. And I also wanted to ask, and perhaps this is a better question for our finance director who's at the table with us. As you look at the CERT SBE spend and the increase in that, you do note that for 2018, 19% of the discretionary operational spend was with CERT SBE. And then somewhere else in the document, you talk about 32% of the project spend. Oh yeah, it's on the performance page on 221. 32% of the discretionary project spend being with CERT SBs. And I just wanted to ask if you'll talk a little bit, and that would be the finance director, about the difference between operational and project spend in that area and the limitations in that regard.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, I'll start with my understanding, and Jean can add to it, add or subtract. as the case may be.
Maybe we should have asked her first.
Well,
Go ahead.
I think what they're trying to say on the discretionary side is discretionary, not discretionary services, but discretionary in terms of their ability to select a vendor through an open competitive process. They can't select what vendor they get their electricity from. If they have a joint powers agreement and pay for services, the city of St. Paul, other public vendors, those are not discretionary expenditures. But I'm guessing that all the other sort of things that they select the vendor through an open competitive process is in their camp of discretionary, and that's what the numbers apply to. But I'll give a chance to Jean to confirm or
So discretion
or not.
as opposed to mandated,
Yes.
but whether or not we can make that choice.
Okay.
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner Carter, and thank you, Mr. Merkins. Yes, I think that's the accurate description of our discretionary operational spend and what we do there. The other part where we talk about the goals, the workforce inclusivity goals that we include in the construction contracting, really has to do with the labor pool, the labor force, and the number of minority and women that are employed on those construction jobs. That's where we're really trying to focus
With the projects.
on the construction contracting, to attempt to make a more of a life-changing impact on someone than merely 2 weeks on a job and done. But really working with Workforce Solutions to see if there's some way to, how do we sustain that employment? That it's not, unfortunately, some company or some vendor working to achieve a good number on a project, but it doesn't translate into any sort of sustained employment for the residents.
So the project area is more advanced in terms of the inclusion of workers there. We can't do as much on the operational end because, as you say, there are certain vendors who are somewhat exclusive in that regard. But we're working to advance both areas with a little bit greater success in the discretionary.
The
project discretionary.
Commissioner Carter, the discretionary spend that we talk about is truly around the dollars and how much of our dollars spent goes to cert SBEs. When we're looking in this case at the 32 and 20 that we include in the construction contracting, it's truly about the number of workers.
Okay.
So it's a different metric that we're talking about. But in the bigger construction jobs and the general contractors and other contractors that are out there, they are being asked to achieve these workforce inclusivity goals by many folks, not just us from the county, but the other counties, cities, et cetera. And they are motivated to work to help achieve those numbers, but also to go further in terms of some more sustainable employment for folks. Yeah. But that is where we have some work to do in terms of our contracting and procurement flexibilities, is how do we make that an integral part of a selection criteria when it isn't just about
value.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, I do want to go back here for just a little bit. For the libraries, as far as what we need back as a board, for the libraries, the ask is regarding the fines and extending those to all patrons and including the impacts on library users. So that's for the library. For this budget, if I could. For this budget, one thing that I heard but wasn't explicitly stated was that it would be a good idea to get the Minnesota Landmarks full budget so that we can look at what our portion of that is and how they are funding. Both Commissioner Ortega and I sit on their board, and so we have a knowledge of it that the others may not. And then also the property management portfolio. What is there now, and what the potentials are as far as bringing in other facilities that are owned by the county. So those, just so we had the asks right after each budget, and I meant to do that before and I forgot to do it. Okay.
Thank you, Madam
We
Chair.
have, next we have Public Works. And I guess my question is to the folks here, do you want to take a short break before or after that?
After. Maybe right now. Oh, somebody's going.
Okay.
Mine right now.
You need yours right now?
Well, I mean-
Okay.
I mean before,
Okay.
right, before they go, right? Because they're going to go now, right?
Yes, so we want to take a short break right now?
Yeah.
And I do mean a short break, again, because we are running a little behind on the schedule.
Thanks.
So 5 minutes, okay, 7 minutes. I'd like to call the Ramsey County Budget Committee of the Whole back to order. And we will move right into Ted Schoenecker with Public Works. And I think I said that right, didn't I?
Absolutely you did.
Okay. I should know. I worked with your wife for
The
many
answer is
years.
yes
So.
right now. Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you. As Jill and Jean said before me, this budget that's in front of you wouldn't be here without all the help of Public Works staff. They've been phenomenal through this process. Especially I'm going to call out Tony Luckin and Chris Long Henry and George as our new controller and helping a new director in this position get to where we are in this right now. I'd also really like to recognize Joanna. Joanna has been fabulous in her patience with us, in her ability to help us through this. The way that she described us was bright, energetic, and a force to be reckoned with. You could also probably use that analogy with puppy black labs. So just whenever you think of EGCI, think of a bunch of new black labs running around. Yep, we're all happy, we're all energetic. We may slobber every now and then,
But you're about getting the work done.
Exactly. Yes, you throw a ball, we'll go chase it. And then just before I get into the rest of this, you know, Jill was up here talking about the library stuff. I'm a little jealous of Jill right now. She's got friends of the library. I want to know where my friends of Public Works are. Sometimes it's yeah. All right, so I'm going to jump into this now.
Wow.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Public Works interacts with almost every resident in Ramsey County almost every single day. Whether they want to or not, they are interacting with us in some way. If we do the math on that, that is over 200 million interactions in a year that we, through Public Works, through what we own, build, maintain, operate, are interacting with those people that use our system. The proposed 2020-21 Public Works budget reflects the county's vision, mission, and goals of a resident's first approach to doing business. Adding more specificity, this budget reflects the county's strategic initiatives around racial equity and community engagement, and it incorporates the direction around energy governance and contracting and workforce inclusion. As you've heard in this budget, Public Works moves from 138.33 full-time equivalent employees, or FTEs, in 2019 to 142.33 FTEs in 2020, and then 143.33 FTEs in 2021. 2 of these positions were transferred from Workforce Solutions. We appreciate Workforce Solutions' assistance in that. And the other 3 are new FTEs being proposed. Consistent with previous years, the Regional Railroad Authority levy is increased to the maximum percentage in 2020 and 2021 to prepare for our major transit ways as they move towards construction and operations. Public Works is responsible for planning, designing, building, maintaining, and operating the county transportation system. This includes roads, bridges, trails, sidewalks, transit ways, and then all of the other things that we don't think of every day that go into doing all those things. The signs, the drainage structures, the pavement markings, the signals, all those other things that we're not going to get into here. On average, Public Works delivers about $30 million worth of construction projects every year. A major reconstruction project takes about 3 years from start of design to start of construction. Our cities, residents, businesses, and people who use our transportation system expect us to communicate with and engage them earlier in the process so that these projects can be delivered in collaboration with them. The Dale Street 94 project and the Rice Street's visioning study that is currently going on are just two examples of this commitment on our part. Each project is unique, and engagement is addressed in different ways to effectively connect with the different communities that we are working in. In reviewing several of our previous year's 5-year transportation improvement program plans, there was a reoccurring pattern where projects were identified to be constructed in a specific year, but then moved out to a future year because we did not have the staffing resources to start these projects when they needed to be started. Every year a construction project is delayed, that project becomes more expensive to build. Then we have our transit ways. The transit ways that the county is either leading or heavily involved in as a partner. These are multi-year, multi-million-dollar investments that require a sustained high level of professional attention and expertise in a highly scrutinized environment. Collaboration with other agencies and partners, engagement with the community, and broad-based effective communication are paramount in successfully delivering one of these projects. Your approval this morning of the Gold Line local agency funding commitment was 11 years in the making. 11 years ago, I may have had hair. That is a long sustained amount of time on your part and your commitment to a transit way, also on our staff side from a resource, from a funding, just from that long-term commitment of building and growing something like that. As Gold Line, Rush Line, and Riverview continue to move towards construction and operation, the need for staffing resources continue to grow to meet the demands of these projects. As we talk about community engagement and racial equity in our work, as a department, we are getting better, but we have room to grow and improve. On a project-by-project basis, we are making our largest strides to ensure that we are making every effort to connect with the community that fits their needs and not ours. We are collaborating more with other Ramsey County departments like Public Health, Workforce Solutions, Economic Development, knowing that the impacts and benefits are just beyond transportation. Public Works has been working in collaboration with Workforce Solutions, Parks and Rec, Property Management, Economic Development, and Property Records or Property Tax Records and Elections to improve our workforce inclusion percentages for people of color and females, and to increase our use of small business enterprise contracting with a focus on minority and women-owned businesses. Jean previously talked about that. In her presentation, we are strong partners in that relationship with Jean and others. With an annual $30 million capital transportation program, we can and will have a large influence on moving the needle for both of those. When we start to look at our own workforce within Public Works, this is where we have the most work to do and the most growth potential. We have been working with human resources to understand the data better. Are we getting diverse candidates to even apply? Are they having difficulty getting through the application process? Are they being screened out at certain points in that review and interview process? It's more about understanding what the data is so that we can approach how we reach and get those diverse candidates into our workforce better. We have changed some of the minimum qualifications and interview processes with the help of human resources to try and get to that more diverse candidate pool. Like I said, we are working on this, but we have a lot of room to grow. Closing this out here, our aim is to provide a transportation system that is effective for all users, of all abilities, of all races, for all modes. We know that there will be conflict and differing opinions on what the transportation system should do, but we appreciate the board's direction in establishing a priority on this system. As staff, that allows us to go out into the community and have meaningful and effective engagement with that community on the work that we are doing in their area. So we thank you for that strategic direction for us. And with that, Madam Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner McDonough.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to start right where you left off, because this is a partnership, and I thank you for stepping up and following through on that strategic vision. For this board to take that position, I think was really, a strong position, but to implement it with engineers and folks that have been doing this and have their own thoughts and actually move forward. And I think it's been a, demonstration of leadership on the staff side to be receptive and moving forward and continuing to be willing to take a look at how our system works for everybody. And so it's a strong partnership, and I want to recognize that. The budget question I have here is on your vacancy factor, where we're moving you from 0.5 to 1.5 to help pay for some things, and I understand the vacancy factor. I get worried though when we start using that as a budget tool and not hitting the sweet spot about what we really need for our workforce. If it's interim, temp workers, seasonal, part-time, full-time, FTEs, to really make sure that we're actually hitting that and making sure that, because once we start moving down this path where the vacancy factor starts becoming a budget tool, it's not transparent, and other issues start driving decisions about when and how we hire people, not based on if we really need a need, but because we're using it as a budget tool. And I just raised that. I think, this budget proposal, I'm not suggesting we change it for this, but I want to call that out and make sure when we're moving forward, not just in your department, and that's why I'm looking at you, that, the effort here to make sure we've got the right workforce trained in the right way, but not use that workforce as a budgeting tool to help fund things that come up and start trying to control the hiring or replacement of that workforce based on other outside budget issues versus whether there's a real need for another truck driver or a real need for another mechanic.
CFO Merkins would like to respond to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I think it's a good caution, and I understand, your point wholeheartedly, and I think it's important for us to be mindful of that as we go forward in this budget and talk about vacancy factors. I was going to talk a little bit more about overall the vacancy factor approach in this budget during our strategic team overview, but that's at the end. I'm getting questions from commissioners. Let me maybe start that discussion now, just so that you can kind of have it in your consciousness going forward. We as an organization have used vacancy factor differently over the past couple bienniums, and we continue to evolve and we adapt and we grow. And it'll be interesting to see whether we get to a place where we say this is golden and this is the way we're going to do it forever and ever and ever. Vacancy factor in the budget process is basically a representation of the reality that no matter what the budget is that you provide for an organization or a department, by the end of the year, it's unlikely they're going to be able to spend their entire budget just because of turnover. And we all know that you can't predict where the turnover is going to be. You can't predict with any precision which positions are going to turn over. It's just an aggregate, positions turn over. And there's a gap between when they turn over and when they get filled. We end up with the vacancy savings. So over the years, we've observed this and the variability of it in different departments, and we've had different approaches. I think it was 2, if not 3 bienniums ago, we said, well, we want to try to take advantage of this savings by not just presuming it doesn't happen and then having money left over at the end of the year and then and only then not knowing what to do with it. Instead, let's try to anticipate what the vacancy savings might be. So we put a 2% vacancy factor to all departments a number of years ago. Then we had the small departments that said, hey, wait a minute, we only have a small staff. We may not have any turnover at all. That's not fair to us. It penalizes us. Don't do that. So then we lowered it down to 0.5%, which is what we have by and large for more departments than not in our current budget. In our current budget being 2018, 2019. Going into this budget, we said we need to maybe move away from the one-size-fits-all there's not one percentage that's going to work for all departments as well. So we've taken a more surgical approach. We've looked at on a department by department basis what kind of year-end savings they've had at the end of the year over the past couple years, and then made some decisions on, well, if history repeats itself, particularly the large departments, the larger, the more mindful this is, how can we budget for that in a way that allows the department to move ahead, get a full budget authorization, a full complement authorization, but we know that there may be savings at the end. By instituting a vacancy factor, we basically say a certain percentage of your budget we're going to take back. It falls to the bottom line of the levy because we know you're going to end up with year-end money anyway. So it's an opportunistic thing, but it's also something that we hope means that we're not over-levying. So that's the motivation. Hopefully that makes some sense. Sorry to be getting so far down into the weeds, but what you need to know at the end of the story is, in this particular department, we've looked at department by department, so you will see variability in what the vacancy factor is for each and every department.
And this is the first biennium that we're doing this.
Of that particular approach, that is correct, Madam Chair.
County Manager O'Connor?
Madam Chair, Commissioner McDonough, just one additional point on top of the specific description there. I do not want to get to proposing a vacancy factor that's prospective and trying to drive us toward a certain behavior to meet a budget. And I hear that in your comments, or I hope I'm hearing that correctly. By looking back at 5-year rolling averages of past behavior, we're using past behavior from departments to dictate the planning that we're doing, and it's a careful line to walk. What we didn't do is say, let's add 0.5% or 1% on top of past behavior and force them to change, because I share the view we should not try and balance our budget off the backs of employee hours that need to be in the field doing work. And that's a careful balance for us to continue to make sure we manage.
Go ahead.
And Madam Chair, I appreciate all that. I totally get the vacancy factor, and I really appreciate the thoughtfulness about trying and recognizing the differences. I think it just might be helpful then for transparency, because the way this is worded, it could be really interpreted that, what we wanted to fund enterprise asset managed capability specialists, but you didn't want it to be a direct levy increase. So for the next 2 years, you're going to take another 1% vacancy to fund it, right? That's what I don't want us to see, and that's what I'm hearing you say. So it might be how we position this, just to make sure that there is some transparency, because there's two different things going on here then in this one paragraph. And they're not necessarily related, but it's pretty easy to interpret that they could be related.
Madam Chair, if I could also just clarify, there was also an increase in the vacancy factor for the library. So this is actually the second time that you've seen this afternoon.
And I'm not going to wait until the end of this. What I heard you also say was that you're going to have a further in-depth explanation of this as we go, when you get to the overview part.
Madam Chair, that's correct. And what I was thinking about doing is actually handing out the sheet that will show you department by department what the vacancy factor is that we have for each and every department and division, so that as budgeteers, what's baked into this particular budget.
And what I also, so we'll have that further explanation, but I think, and this isn't specific to your budget, so don't get too comfortable there, because we'll have other questions for you.
Hey, this is great. Focus on me.
Is because of the words that are on our pages here make a difference. People do delve into that and could have that question. And so just as we asked for additional information on the previous budgets, I think having something that not only gives the list, but also explains how you came up with it. The fact that it's a 5-year rolling average, or however you did it, so that it's clear that it's realistic. And I think that's the point. Don't add to it or subtract from it for budgeting purposes. Be realistic about what you think is going to be there. Is that helpful, Commissioner McDonough?
Yeah,
to have
thank
it? Okay. Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I just want to thank you, Ted, and your whole team for all of your work and just being available to address our community's concerns. I think I was surprised when I first got elected at number of calls that you do get about your roads. I mean, my very first council meetings were all about access points, entry points, roads, you know, just, and we're still dealing with them, and you've been just great about addressing my communities. Lauderdale's very happy with their turnback. Roseville's very excited that we're working with our library exit and entrance. And just thank you so much for addressing our community's needs. Also for Active Living Ramsey Communities and your, you know, support of that, and just how we're moving forward with that. And then, of course, I mentioned earlier this morning the work that your department, especially Brian Isaacson, is doing on TAB and TAC, our Transportation Advisory Board, and our Technical Advisory Committee, and how much work you're putting in on that work. So thank you for all of that. I just have a couple of clarifying questions, and maybe just you could elaborate a little bit about this. You mentioned you're adding one more person, and I think if I'm reading this, you're adding a person in multimodal planning. If you just want to expand on that a little bit, or maybe I'm just putting that where it isn't, but just talk a little bit about multimodal planning, because I love the idea of it. If you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Madam Chair, Commissioner McGuire, we're actually adding two.
Oh,
so in 2020, the proposal is to add one, and then 2021, second
okay.
person would be added under multimodal planning. And again, this is getting back to the growth and development of the transitway corridors and all the activities that go along with them. Maybe that's primarily one of those roles, and then the other role is tied to a lot of the activities around the All Abilities Transportation Network policy and how we start implementing that, developing a more robust pedestrian and bicycle plan for Ramsey County, growing off of what has already been done. And again, just where we've been more in reactionary mode in those discussions, in those arenas, and bringing in an entity in those planning positions allows us to better position ourselves to be more proactive, so that when we get to points of building projects and moving projects forward, we already have our plans in place. We already know what we're going to be doing. We already know where we're going to be doing it.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to call it out and say thank you. I'm really glad we're going to be starting, you know, we'll not be in such reactionary mode, that we're really in a more proactive mode. So thank you so much for that. And then just another clarifying question. So on the budget pages on 201 and 202 and I think others, so I see that in the budget, the levy plus the financing is equal to the budget. And so if you could just talk a little bit about, I know what the levy is, and then the financing is that, just talk a little bit more about what that all includes, those financing. And it's, you know, I don't know that it's the same for all the areas, but maybe it is. Could you talk about where that
Have you not seen that chart?
I have seen it, but I just want you to clarify it and talk about it one more time.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, these are our other...
It's just all the funding, right? It's all the funding sources. So you could just say that.
Our other funding sources, county, state aid, highway, some wheelage tax, revenues through the Union Depot, those types of activities. That's where that number's from.
And I think, Madam Chair, thank you for referencing the chart. I know we gave it to Jim Tolis when he retired, the big chart of all of the
etched in stone
funding streams that there are in funding. But I just want to recognize that this is a lot of funding streams. It's not just one financing mechanism. There's a lot of them going into that. So thank you.
That's a very good recognition. And I also want to point out I know that we get the report every year on the wheelage tax, and basically the list of these are the things that would not have happened except for the wheelage tax, so people can actually see where that impact is. Not that it's, you know, we are trying to, we are prioritizing on our goals. And you articulated them very well, and I love the All Abilities Transportation Network, because that is what we need to do when we look at prosperity, opportunity, well-being. But we will have that wheelage, we will get that report so that it's helpful for people to understand where the money goes, because that was the biggest problem with the chart of all the funding sources it was like, oh my gosh, they come from so many different places, and they're most often anyhow, targeted on one particular thing, so you can't move the money around, which is not a bad thing, but it's still hard to explain. Commissioner McGuire?
So thank you, Madam Chair. So just, you mentioned it, and I just want to affirm that we
well, I don't know when we get to see that report, but it is a great report, that wheelage tax, because that is a direct, our residents pay into it and we get it's a direct receipt. It doesn't have to funnel through any state or federal program. It just directly goes into our programming. So whenever it's appropriate, we love to see that chart. And then I just want to comment that with all of these different funding sources, one of the main ones is our state and sometime in federal. But, you know, we just had this strategic planning for AMC, and we have taken a position on the importance of increasing revenue into the state funds so that they can really help us out, and we don't have to really, add to these projects because the state can't put enough in. So we really need the state to get more money, which is why I know we took a position in, supporting a gas tax increase, and I continue to support that. And just know that would help us even more if the state had more revenue. So I just wanted to put in a little editorial comment on that.
Madam Chair, could I?
Go ahead.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, listening to the board discussion this morning regarding the AMC meeting and your involvement in the Transportation Committee, I reached out to my counterpart at Washington County, Wayne Sandberg, who's the president of the Minnesota County Engineers Association, who was leading that discussion that you were there. And one of the things that he said thank you to the 3 members that showed up and participated in that from Ramsey County. He was very appreciative of your involvement in that. So
thank you.
Just thought I'd pass that along.
Thank you.
Okay, I have 3 more commissioners, and I'm not sure, I've got them in order here, so if you've got to reference back somebody else, go ahead and do that. But Commissioner Montes Castillo, and then Carter and Ortega.
Thank you. Thank you again for your great work. I've been continuously impressed, as I tell you often, but it's important. I just have a question about, it's budget season. So we just heard the mayor of St. Paul's budget proposal is specifically about roads. And in his proposal or his budget briefing, he said he was going to come to the county for some partnerships. So I don't know if you all caught that, but I caught it. And so what I was wondering is, where are we in alignment with our cities, whether it's St. Paul or other cities, on their transit plans? Is there opportunity for us to help or to assist or work together? I know you do a lot of collaboration, and that has greatly improved in the last couple of years. But when you hear those things, where do we respond in our budget, or don't we? Or is it a policy decision? What are your thoughts on that related to our budget?
Madam Chair, Commissioners, it's a balance of everything. So whether it's just us participating in them in a discussion of joint resources, of joint issues, of joint transportation things, I'll say. There's other areas where it's more specific, where we are doing a construction project on a county road. We have a cost participation policy, and there are things in that policy that require the city to pay for it. So let's use right-of-way acquisition. It's a 50-50 cost. And so that helps the city be very much engaged in our projects. That helps both entities build a good project for both sides. And so that may be one of the areas where they may ask questions about and say, hey, is this really the policy that through the board that we should still be implementing? So there's discussions like that. Another area is where we are starting discussions with them again, and I know that this can send us down a path, is our maintenance agreement that we have with St. Paul, where they maintain, do routine maintenance on most of our county roads within the city. So we're reigniting those discussions with them to talk about, okay, what does that mean? What are the costs associated with it? So that could be kind of the main things that comment was tied around.
Okay, thanks.
One thing that I do want to point out is in the cost participation program that we have, there was a time when whatever project came in, I mean, it was piecemeal and clearly not working and not equitable. And so the cost participation, I'm going to have trouble saying that, program was really very defined on what is and what isn't the level of participation, so that you don't have a suburban area or one neighborhood even within a community treated differently than something else. But so those are very specific things, but there's a lot of discussion room on other things as well.
Maybe I just have one follow-up,
Okay.
Madam Chair, related to this is, I think I've seen a few projects of late that the discussion is, especially with our all abilities policy, where the city's participation is in sidewalks, is that right? But if they don't have the funding for the sidewalk, we don't want it to hold up our all abilities policy. And so I was just wondering if there's opportunity that we do the right thing anyway, and how that looks. I don't want to put you on the spot to make a decision, but just to make sure that we're having that conversation, because I believe our all abilities policy is the right policy, and we want to do the right thing for our communities.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, that's where I would say that the best way we can do that is engage with them sooner. And so anytime we bring a surprise from a budgeting perspective, it's tough a year out to suddenly have to accommodate within your budget a new request of money. So that's why we're trying to get out 3 years, 4 years, and talking with the communities on these projects so that they have time to understand what the budget implications are, so that they can then put it in their capital budget for those projects.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Carter.
Thank you. As we talk about the service team orientation and its enhancements to our ability to do our best work for a community, I'm drawn to page 192, where you talk about challenges that impact department performance, and you mentioned there some work and partnership between a number of entities around ensuring inclusive contracting and hiring, and you specifically mentioned workforce solutions. I'd like to ask a question about the kind of creative partnering that may be possible as we look to public works and workforce solutions and the variety of work that you do, whether it's building bridges or striping roads or transit corridors, whatever the case may be, and the work that Workforce Solutions does, particularly with people who need to be matched to jobs. Can you give a scenario within which this kind of partnering can help us to do better work with and for our communities? Am I stumping you?
No, you're not, Madam Chair.
He looks at me like.
And again, I will be very transparent. This is an area for growth for us of understanding and learning. And that's where I will say the true advantage of that service team is that Ling and I are hip in this. And so I'm not a workforce specialist expert at all, but Ling is and her staff are. So with John O'Phelan and the work that he's been doing in this arena, we're working more closely with him. A couple of the specific examples that have come out is, let's say, debundling our large projects. One of the items that we hear is that because we go out with a large project, it's harder for the small business enterprise contractors to do that much work. It's too much for them to consume. And so, or the project as a whole is too big with too many moving components for them to manage. So there's opportunities for us where we're working with John and then using best practices from what MnDOT is doing right now to look at ways to break out these projects so that we can then target specific small business enterprise companies, and then also minority or women-owned ones in particular. So that's probably one of the specific ways, I'll say, from a contracting side of it. That we're working with it. Ling and I have had some very preliminary generic discussions about kind of in the workforce inclusion arena of they have individuals come into their space, into their business and say, I'm looking for a job. Is there something within Public Works, whether it's one of our projects or something that we are doing, where we can say, hey, you can connect with this individual or this company or that entity where we know the contractors, and we can say, we have individuals that we know of that are looking for jobs. We've had preliminary discussions about that and really haven't dug into that too deeply yet.
Look forward to hearing more about that, and to Ramsey County being an example of an organization that uses its own capability to help its residents get to work. So I'm so thrilled that you're having those conversations more aggressively today. I know we've thought about it and asked about that over some time even before you were here. And so having you here and the new connections to workforce, look forward to hearing more about our vision and our actual progress in that regard.
Okay, Commissioner Ortega, and then I will point out that we still have 3 departments to get through today. So if we could, and if there are questions that still remain, obviously, we can get them to to Ted or to any of the department heads and make sure that the answers get back, the questions and the answers get back to all of us. Commissioner Ortega, I think this is the first time you've spoken today, and I'm saying.
Don't take too long.
Madam Chair, are you telling me to button it up?
Yeah, well.
You know,
In other words, congratulations.
a lot of was sort of a segue to what I'm going to say. A previous couple of commissioners, you know, two previous lives back that worked for Washington County, and 10 years ago, when I came out to working on the goal line. And I think with all the questions we're asking, I think what he brings unique to his position at this time is that he understands both the transit and the transportation side of things. And so I think his ability to start integrating some of the very things that we want to do probably comes easier to him than even some of the predecessors we've had in his position. So I just wanted to say that because I think that's also critical. We could put all this stuff on paper, but it still takes that person to see it and put it together.
Well, and I do have to tell you, Ted, that when you first started talking about all the things that were going to be, you were doing and the excitement that I heard in your voice, I kind of questioned in my mind whether you really were an engineer. So,
I question it every day.
But yes, we are very lucky to have you here.
Madam Chair, if you'll just allow me, we have a phenomenal public works staff, and it is not me. It is really them that do the majority of this work and the heavy lifting, and they're just an energetic bunch who just really want to do really good things for the county. So they are phenomenal in what they do.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Ling Becker from Workforce Solutions, found on page 232.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to present our budget and our vision of our department to you. Our budget process was really a team effort from the beginning because I'm only 6 months into my role. This started well before me, so I especially, obviously need to thank Leon Beckerman, who was the director previous to me, who worked closely with Joanna, and I think thank you to Doshani Dye and Melody Santana Marty and Holly Schnitzler and George. I mean, this was a team effort, really, our Workforce Solutions budget, and so I really want to give the credit to them. Again, I'm hitting my 6-month stride here in early September. I'm really grateful to lead this department that was really strategically put into the service team that you're hearing about today. We provide both mandatory and voluntary employment guidance services. In an annual year, we serve about 11,000 residents of Ramsey County. In addition, in our career labs, we see about 1,000 people per month. Our budget is down due to lower anticipated grant revenues. The grant revenues of our budget were reduced $2.6 million from 2019. Workforce Solutions is a 96% grant-funded department. Challenges with that mean that many things are out of our control and the work can be prescriptive, oftentimes making it challenging to innovate. However, I'm not going to spend my time with my budget presentation bemoaning what we can't change. Rather, I'm going to focus on ways within our budget structure, how we can pivot to better meet the needs of Ramsey County residents and businesses over these next 2 years. I know you've been seeing both small and large ways of how the service team structure has benefited the county's operations. Working as an integrated unit, we support each other across department lines. With our budget trending downward, our department had excess unfunded, unfilled FTEs. In collaboration with our service team to reach their strategic and our strategic priorities, we transferred 4 of those unfunded FTEs, and you've heard about that already today from many of those departments. Our department FTEs are moving from 83 in 2019, respectively to 79 for both of the years of the budget, 2020 and 2021. So the workforce ecosystem is a complicated one. The demands from all sides is continuing to intensify and push around that ecosystem. According to Minnesota Compass, by 2020, Minnesota will need 3.2 million workers to keep pace with historic rates of growth. In addition, we have changing demographics. an aging workforce, and in particular, in Ramsey County, a more diverse young workforce. Within the business community, there are disruptive technologies transforming the way we do work. 83% of jobs paying less than $20 an hour will be impacted by automation, particularly in industries like telecommunications, retail, education, hospitality, travel, and finance. As I work to position our department, we cannot expect to do business as usual and expect to get the results that residents and businesses need in Ramsey County. As the new director, I see this as a time to evaluate how do we operate more nimbly and what needs to be rearranged in order to get workers more ready into careers that are relevant, high demand, and high growth. And how do we do this within the lens of our county's strategic priorities? So I'm going to speak to 4 areas of how I think this is going to be done. They are how we as a county engage with that workforce system. Secondly, how do we bring in the community voice? Thirdly, how do we deliver services? And lastly, how do we position workforce solutions to drive economic development to ensure opportunity for all? So I referenced this ecosystem of workforce. Within that exists a myriad of organizations that have important roles to play in the continuum of work, from work readiness to training to support. In this budget, we've allocated over $1 million in client work experience wages and another $1.6 million in training and education for clients. While acknowledging that we are continuing to experience a strong economy, it is not lost to any of us that in these times of opportunity and growth, many of our communities experience very deep disparities and struggles toward financial sufficiency. So I'm going to be positioning our department to be more adaptable in order to tackle these disparities for people of color and Indigenous head on through deep and strategic partnerships. There may have been times when our department needed to lean into some partnerships, maybe even some times where we've needed to walk into them more. But I'll be happy to say that I think we're going on having our department go on a full-on sprint in order to meet our partners where they are at, to deepen areas where we can co-create, where we can elevate, and where we can celebrate community programs that support residents of Ramsey County to gain skills, education, and employment. As a sampling, this past week, I've spent time at Eastside Business Exchange, Cookie Cart, Junior Achievement, Lutheran Social Services, the Senna Foundation, and St. Paul's Tech for All initiative. Starting my role only in early March, I've had 74 unique partner community meetings with stakeholders. Internally within the county, we are doing very much the same. Working within the county, there are so many departments in which we are intensifying our conversations as to how training and employment can bring better outcomes for those involved in our corrections programs, in our judicial system, in our foster care, and in our veteran services, to name a few. We are also looking to align our work more on the critical issues that are affecting Ramsey County, such as homelessness. We recently applied for a homeless waiver for our youth program in order to allocate more resources to homeless youth. In addition, we'll be co-located at the new St. Paul Opportunity Center opening this fall. And we're in conversations with several other homeless support services for co-locations in the very near future. So looking more broadly, the flow between businesses and employees operates within a much larger regional marketplace than just Ramsey County. The Greater Metropolitan Workforce Council brings some needed regional coordination. This work is something that the county is leading in on many levels. Most specifically, Commissioner Carter serves as our current chair. The opportunity to work as one region with Ramsey County leading that voice is something that strengthens our collective voice among many stakeholders. Another area of focus is how we're going to deliver our workforce services, and this strategically aligns with our residents' first priority. In order for workforce programs to be effective, we must ensure they are delivered and designed with input from those who they serve. We continue to deepen our investment to ensure community voices are heard. Through our RFP processes and in examining and re-examining our work, again, we continue to bring partners of equity and cultural consultants to lead and to guide us and walk alongside us. In this budget, there is an embedded $1.3 million for culturally specific knowledge and efforts to come next to us in our service delivery systems from the community. Several priorities in the county budget support and deepen our ability to engage in unprecedented ways. As we deliver services and programs to ensure our workforce represents the community that makes up Ramsey County, in the most recent report from Human Resources, Workforce Solutions is a leading department in the number of people of color who we employ and hire, the number of promotions, and the number of people who hold leadership positions. In addition, we strive to be a county that is a leading example of an inclusive employer. Through the investments in this budget, we will build on that work that has been started regionally between other cities and counties in the area and support a Ramsey County public sector pathway effort to grow our talent pipelines, diversifying the makeup of our county employees, bringing different perspectives and skill sets to do our work. So service delivery is a very important part in how we make a deeper impact on residents. This requires evaluation of from both an internal and an external perspective. So by 2020, we will move toward that 100% of our programs will have client evaluations, either in the form of surveys, focus groups, and interviews when they are done with our services. As I mentioned, our department has been historically funded by grants, and those grants have driven our organizational structure. With a lens toward residents first, it really is challenging us how we are going to deliver these services. So I'm leading currently our department through a reorganization, driven by the residents first at its very core. Our reorganization will be based on integration of services rather than aligning our staff by funding streams going forward. This is a very significant change for our department. I know in your IPR budget hearings, there was conversations about change management. Change in our department do not end when the board passed the strategic plan. It doesn't end when you pass this budget, and it doesn't even end when we say things are changing. In order to truly manage change, there needs to be ongoing dialogue, a trusting environment with a lot of transparency, and many ways for our staff, the frontline folks who deliver the residents first services, to have a voice into that. So in our department, as we shift our organizational structure, we are launching a department-wide Residents First Task Force so that employees representing all different aspects of our work can inform how their perspectives affect residents first. So one very tangible example I have that they've given me is working around staff onboarding and training. These are the types of things that truly translate into meaningful value for what Residents First looks like for staff, is to be onboarded and trained better to deliver the services. I have told staff that we cannot work in fear of change, but rather we can only become better by being able to adapt. We all know if we continue to do things that we've always done, we will not get better. Change stretches us, and it is critical to ensure those needing our services are able to receive seamless service and to be able to have their services braided in a way that maximizes the services that they deserve. Externally, we are aiming for a federated model, a hub and spoke. It's something that the department has aspired to for many years. We are now advancing this model very quickly under Residents First. We will continue to offer comprehensive workforce programs, but these services are moving out to the community in areas of co-location with our partners, libraries, rec centers, community colleges. There are so many partners around Ramsey County ready to welcome us. Many more have invited us, and we have begun to respond in earnest, and we will continue to deploy our employment services into as many places as we are able in the weeks to come. Advancing priorities also around comprehensive economic development and having that work align intentionally within our service team means that workforce and economic development combine forces in innovative ways that the county hasn't had before. Now, as Carrie Collins and I are on board on the service team, we are poised to leverage the county's economic development efforts and investments to invest in human capital development and in community wealth building for our communities within our economic development strategies. In addition, focusing on Ramsey County businesses and their workforce needs to be at the forefront of our work as well, not just a job seeker. The equation of economic vitality actually needs both sides of the supply and demand to be aligned. Our employers are a necessary part of that work. The way we do that is through our Workforce Innovation Board. It is made up of 51% businesses at least. Our WIB is currently wrapping up a 3-year strategic plan, and I'm looking forward to sharing that with the board this fall. Our department will be intentionally and tracking greater depth and breadth of our business partnerships. In addition, we will be out in the community expanding those partnerships with economic development partners and with chambers. Later this year, we'll be launching a new initiative where we will be partnering with local communities to do a series of business retention and expansion visits that are focused specifically on workforce needs with HR directors of businesses in Ramsey County. All departments in EGCI, and you've heard many of them, are committed to ensuring that we have inclusive contracting and workforce participation when it comes to our construction efforts and more. We are working to have better tools to track this work. On the employment side, we continue to play a role to be a conduit between those traditionally underrepresented groups to those who want construction careers. We support a robust website that provides an opportunity for a career match, and we would like to continue and further that work. In addition, I have some exciting news to announce about some of our procurement and contracting work around veterans in particular. I wanted to call out especially the offices of procurement and finance and our open data portal for their quick work in this effort. This recently just happened since our board workshop, but effective as of August 26th, Ramsey County's procurement policies and procedures will provide an opportunity to contract with veteran-owned or service-disabled veteran-owned small business enterprises on based on 2 quotes up to and including $250,000, which is something we're really excited about. In addition, the open data portal has been updated now to report spend with certified small business enterprises going forward. So that is just something that's been done in probably the last month that we're excited to share. So this overall transformational budget that you are considering through these weeks is exciting for our department's work. It is often said it is really easy to admire problems, but please know that our department is committed to this type of transformational change. Even with a very prescriptive, almost 100% grant-funded department, I assure you we see opportunities of how to be better, and we commit to making the ongoing shifts needed to tackle the challenges ahead of us from the top down, from the inside out. As I've taken leadership of this department, I take that very seriously, both in the work we do, how we do it, and especially who we include in doing it. So, love to take your questions at this time.
Commissioner Castillo, and then Carter, and then McGuire.
I just want to say thank you. Wow.
Thank the Finance Department, Dana Nofke, Finance Procurement. They should get all the glory on that one. So.
And I'm sorry to anyone who has to follow Ling Becker. It's not fair. That's a lot of energy. But it's really exciting to see all that energy focused on really great programs and your quick response to looking at the numbers, re-looking at the numbers, adjusting, working across EGCI and our economic development. We are moving in the right direction, and I think that all of us here are in awe at this moment of your energy and your expertise in this arena, and we're moving our county in the right direction to really build out a base for our residents first, to make sure that they have jobs, good paying jobs, they can be engaged, and we're hitting that equity diversity lens. So kudos to you and your whole department.
Thank you.
I know you didn't do it alone, but wow, do they have an energetic leader that's getting it done. So thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and I just have to say that, you know, when we've had many discussions here about our goals and our vision for Ramsey County, every time we've had those discussions, it all circles back around to a job. Prosperity, opportunity, well-being. A job, and then is housing. Yeah. Because you have to have a stable place to live, and transit and transportation and how you get there. There's a whole lot of other things that go into that, but ultimately you need to have a job, and what you're doing there truly is transformational, and excited to see more to come. I know that. Commissioner Carter, and then McGuire, and then hopefully we can move on.
So thank you so much. I appreciate Commissioner Manis Castillo having called out your energy. I'm not surprised today because I've had the opportunity in a number of workforce settings to hear you, but never more comprehensively, never as comprehensively. So I got to say that if Ted Shaneker is the black lab force to be reckoned with, and that Public Works Department, you certainly are in Workforce Solutions, our energy, and maybe energy rabbit, I don't know. Thank you for all that you've done. And, you know, you pointed out that you've met with 79 different partners. I thought it was probably 150 because you've attended every presentation or visited every partner that we've talked about, and thank you for taking me out to so many as well. I know that board members across the board have asked you and that you've responded, and I know that our partnerships are so much renewed now that you're here and moving forward and taking on this department. You mentioned that you were not able to start and build the infrastructure for this budget. And I know that upon your coming and joining us, you've had concerns. The funding for Workforce Solutions certainly has counter need, you know, and so now as the economy is good and we have people that have so much need and are more difficult to work with, the funding is lower because the grants are lower. But in the spirit of collaboration, you've talked about the manner in which you would not bemoan, but actually build collaboration and work to engage all of this challenge toward a better set of work for us. And so I want to say thank you. And just, I started to say, can you share the ways in which you can meet this challenge, you know, of that funding, the lower funding, and your ability to move forward in this regard. But I think it's clear, you know, you are finding every inch of opportunity across the county and in all of our strategic work, managing to guide and direct that toward assisting all of us in the challenge to get people to work and to living wages and to future careers. I just have to say how much of a leader you are, not just for us, not just for our county, but I also share with this board what an incredible metropolitan leader you are and leader for our state and how respected you already are as you've stepped into this arena. Thank you for your leadership, for your energy.
Thank you.
Wow.
Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wow. I'm going to echo some of my colleagues. Just thank you so much for your energy and your just initiative to really bring this all forward. And yeah, what a great budget presentation. I just have to ask, and maybe this is for you and for our county manager, I think I just want to call out and just if you could explain a little bit when it's, you know, so much of your budget is grant funded. You know, I want to make sure we're not just following the grant money, that we are actually doing what we need to do and hopefully supported by grant money. And I think that's what we're doing, that we're doing what we need to do anyway, and thank heavens there's grants for that. But I'm guessing that if we had something we needed to do that there wasn't grant money for, we would certainly need to find some resources for that, that we don't want you to be stifled ever by that fact, and that we would need to find resources that would be in addition to that. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I just think I want to call out that grant funding is a, you know, great thing.
If I could, I do think that all of our departments look for additional funding, but I think in this department, it really is about the grants because they are directed to specific work. So there are some things, obviously, that have come up that have been small things, but it's still going to be primarily grant funds because just the structure of the workforce solution. Okay, you know what? We need to move quickly, so go ahead and answer.
And then, I support that. I want to comment that it is the work we want to do anyway. We're not just responding to a grant, but hopefully.
No, I think you're correct.
Yes, we are extremely grant funded, but the grants are the opportunities for us to work with very, very targeted populations of need, right? A lot of our grants are formula funded based on what is needed in Ramsey County. There are competitive grants that occasionally I email you folks some information about grants that we're going to be applying for. Those allow us to be more innovative in many ways at times. And again, I mean, a lot of this is just maybe transform the way we do work as much as it is about the money, is to be able to look at our departments, not so much by these funding streams, but how we deliver the services, how we structure them, who we're working with, and where we are co-creating, elevating. I mean, there are so many amazing community partners out there doing great work. I would be completely remiss if we were going to say Ramsey County Workforce Solutions is going to be, some umbrella organization in Ramsey County to take care of all the workforce issues and needs. I mean, we infuse where we need to go. We share, we partner, we lead many times, and that's how, the work is going to get done. So, yeah.
Thank you for that.
Commissioner Carter?
And it is in the spirit of collaboration with our entire community, but also with all of Ramsey County. And much of the work that we're doing right now around community engagement and inequities charges the work that you're doing. And you're able to align and benefit from that. And I so much appreciate you're seeing that coming into this county, that it wasn't just all what workforce had to do, but that you're engaging in a body of work that we're all moving forward together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well said, Lou. Thank you.
Okay.
Next, we have Community and Economic Development, Carrie Collins, on page 246 of our budget books.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the commission. I'll be interested to hear what my spirit animal is following this presentation. I know rabbit and lamb are taken. I'm Carrie Collins. I'm the director of the Community and Economic Development Department, and I'd just like to start off by saying thank you to Joanna Berg, to County Manager Ryan O'Connor, to our service team who worked very collaboratively together to present this budget, and to Community and Economic Development Department, where there was extensive conversation about how do we want to launch really a new department for the county. And so we'll talk a little bit about the initiatives in place, but really this budget is prepared with a lot of community feedback and a lot of thought about how we as a county can be a stronger player in economic development. I would also like to begin my presentation by thanking specifically, again, Joanna Berg and Ryan O'Connor for creating a culture to innovate and create at the county. When I was attracted here, it was, we've got an opportunity to really be a stronger player, and we're interested in your ideas, and we hit the ground running because of that latitude, so thank you. This has been a big year of change for our department. We welcomed me as a new director in November, redevelopment manager Martha Faust, and our new economic development specialist, Rick Howden. So you'll notice that in our department, we're maintaining a highly effective complement of 5. So think about that as we identify the initiatives. I also want to thank you as the board for allowing me to create the deputy director position, allowing me to promote Josh Olson, who has served as my right arm through a very busy 2019. With all of the changes that have occurred, you will note again that CD is not increasing staff at this time. We're going to be relying on stronger partnerships with our city partners and really private philanthropic communities to kind of bolster our initiatives today. In response to the strategic priority, comprehensive economic development to build prosperity, CED has identified programmatic changes and initiatives to build a comprehensive and inclusive economic development plan, identified to more holistically target program and project responsibilities along a continuum of housing and business support services. As you will see in the department overview, the department previously and continues to identify as primarily overseeing federal entitlement programs through the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and manage major redevelopment projects. This hasn't changed. However, what has changed is that our programmatic offerings and our project capacity has grown tremendously. This is a result of additional staff and better alignment of staff, but also a direct result of the investment the board made when $475,000 of bridge funding was approved this year to establish base funding for the new department. As mentioned in the introductory remarks by Ms. Berg, these initiatives can be found as a service team priority, identified as number 3 on page 14, establish economic development base funding. You will recall that the funding centers around 4 new initiatives: an economic competitiveness and inclusion vision plan. This plan will help inform where the county should build or expand programming around areas such as affordable housing, transportation, workforce development, redevelopment, and marketing. We have a lot to learn about the strengths and weaknesses of our local economy and where the county can play a critical role in the housing crisis. We are currently interviewing agencies that have proposed for this plan, so that plan is underway. 2, the Open to Business program, offered through the Metropolitan Consortium of Community Development. This program is slated to launch September 1 and provides an opportunity for anyone to access financial advice and resources to open a new business. This program is designed to grow entrepreneurs in the county, and as expressed at the workshop earlier this year, helps to achieve greater racial equity, as data from other counties show more than 50% of those that use open to business services are people of color. 3, an economic development portal and presence was established that helps to direct businesses and future entrepreneurs to programs, attract businesses to our region, create an incentive dashboard layering state, county, and city incentive options by site for businesses locating to locate or expand here. The contract for that was recently approved, and that is underway. And lastly, 4, Gateway Revitalization Program. This is a pilot program that provides planning and research dollars for multi-jurisdictional corridors along county roads that have been identified as needing additional investment or visioning. The first deadline for that program is in November, and we have received a substantial amount of interest from our city partners. These initiatives are underway or in development and have been budgeted and maintained through 2021. With greater capacity comes opportunities and challenges. The structure of the EGCI team and new leadership now in place is extremely valuable to the county. As promised when I was hired, workforce development will continue to be an opportunity for the county to be a champion. Ling Becker and I are working collaboratively, presenting to communities, exploring new programming and partnerships to address the talent shortage that is plaguing our region and state. At our upcoming Economic Development Summit in September, Ling will lead a conversation with our city partners, specifically on workforce development. Additionally, the initiatives identified, specifically the Vision Plan and Portal, will help the county to build on attracting and maintaining talent of all skill levels to the region. Community and Economic Development and Public Works have worked closely on the major redevelopment projects and have aligned staffing and efforts around the Rice-Larpenter Alliance and Reconnect Rondo. And we will be co-hosting an Access Management Summit in October with planners, engineers, and economic development staff from all of the cities within the county. Community and Economic Development and Parks have begun to explore, with the city of Maplewood by our side, the future of the Battle Creek Golf Course. And Property Management and CED are partnering on the future use of Boys Totem Town. Again, with greater capacity allows us to explore new initiatives. Of course, that comes with challenges as well. Lastly, affordable housing is identified as a challenge and opportunity area for community and economic development. Affordable housing is identified as priorities within both of our major redevelopment projects, and we certainly have our federal entitlement funds that help gap finance additional new units or rehab existing housing in suburban Ramsey County, but we need to continue the conversation around activating the HRA levy or other levy authority. We all know it takes many funding sources to do affordable housing and housing affordability correctly, and we are optimistic that the housing assessment that is a part of the vision plan will steer us in the right direction. As far as equity and inclusion, the community development block grant and home programs, along with the initiatives described, are intended to directly invest in communities of color. The budget through 2021 allows CED to truly grow a strong foundation and reputation as an economic development player that is not just leaning, but diving into inclusive economic development during a ripe time. Conversations around economic competitiveness and community wealth building are happening in the greater economic development community as we speak, and this budget was designed to leverage the resources that we have to better meet the needs of our diverse community. Just to touch on really quickly, we have a number of performance measures that center around the strategic use of federal funds and the advancement of our major redevelopment projects. We intend to dig a little deeper over the next year to create performance measures that align with the initiatives described. I just want to sum up, thank you again for this opportunity to work as a service team and for the base funding to get started in 2019. I think that there will be a considerable amount of change and good things to come as we head into this budget and 2022 and beyond. So thank you, and I'll open up for questions.
Thank you. A big part of what you were talking about was affordable housing and as part of mixed housing, and I think that's an important message as well. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Matas Castillo.
Yeah.
you have some comments.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Carrie, for a great presentation. I cannot assign you a spirit animal. I was thinking the whole time, but it's clear that you are a maximizer on your strengths finder. So
I'm okay with that.
we'll go there.
I'm okay with that.
Thank you so much. The vision in which you have been able to already achieve in such a short amount of time is really inspiring, and we're moving in the right direction, especially working together with all of our other departments to move in the right way. You mentioned our housing crisis, and so I just want us to linger there a little bit longer because we are truly in a housing crisis. Our other departments will hear next Monday from our human services talking about our homelessness, and the only way to address that is to get upstream a little bit, which is what your department ultimately could do, but we haven't set ourselves up yet to be able to respond to that. And so, and I think that, through the last 8 months that I've been here, I've heard every commissioner talk about this as a priority. We have to have housing. We need to address our greatest needs, especially people in the 30 to 50% AMI. And what does that look like? And so one of the things that as I've looked through the budget, and there really isn't any money right now for housing. We're kind of limping along with what we've done in the past. It's about 25 units. We've put policies in place for future, but before we actually could get a unit built and someone housed, we're looking 4 years down the road. And so one of the things that I would like to encourage and ask staff to do is to go back, because now I've heard from you and Ling and everyone else who's got innovative ideas, but to go back and look at maybe there's some other innovative ways that we could, even in this short term, find some money for housing, whether that be in housing infrastructure bonds where we don't have to own buildings, but that we can partner with our businesses and our enterprise force. And maybe there's a way, I just ask yourself, Joanna, County Manager O'Connor, to think about, is there another way that we could be innovative, because I know you're all innovators, to really think about how we can get some dollars into housing in the short term so that we can start leveraging what's to come in the future. And maybe that's a way to look at our financial advisors and incorporate other folks as well.
And I did know, obviously, that this ask was coming. Yeah. And I think that it's a reasonable thing to get the information and then go from there. I do think that it does mean that we would have to have at least a short workshop once staff brings things back. I have Commissioner McGuire and then Commissioner McDonough.
Madam Chair, I yield if the county manager, Commissioner McDonough wants to respond to this directly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm happy to. I was going to ask about affordability too, but they can go.
Okay. Do you want to go first?
Sure.
Sure.
Commissioner, I don't disagree with you that this board and the housing component has been really critical about how we move forward. I get a little concerned here about starting the process here and figuring out that we're going to have a solution by, say, December. I think this is a much more deliberate conversation about an area that we don't have money in right now other than the home or CBDG funding that we get and the focus on the suburban community and what that looks like moving forward. But, thinking about the 2020 and 2021 budget and the work that we're doing between now and December to get approved for a budget, I think having a parallel conversation, but not necessarily tying it to where we might be at the end of December would make sense. I get a little concerned that we're going to try to push a really important conversation into a small window here and trying to come up with some solutions.
And my understanding of what's being asked and why I thought it deserved to have a workshop that staff could come back and say, these are the options, is that if there is something that we could do for the next budget cycle, fine. If there isn't, or it doesn't make sense, at least we can be informed. So it's not directing an outcome other than information from which we can discuss it. So no, there is no agenda here to push something through without having it fully vetted. But in order to get some basic information on it and see where it goes from there is what I'm hoping. And quite frankly, if there is something that makes sense for the next biennium, we should know that, and if not, we should know that as well, and that sets us up for the future biennium or the future year, depending on how we look at it.
I just wouldn't, Madam Chair, Commissioner, I just don't want us to miss an opportunity if there is some room or some opportunity within this budget cycle so that we can do something, even if it's modest, moving into the future. I know that we're going to hear from constituents in our community about housing. Where on the cups we heard the county assessor's office, the CFO presented, our tax folks presented about our economy is at the tipping point. People are on the edge, and for many of our communities, that they're really on the edge for a loss of housing. We've seen this in the past. If you read the headlines in the paper, we're at pending doom, and I just want us to be prepared and to make sure that we have checked every option in preparation to make sure that we are the safety net for our communities and thinking about what may come if indeed it comes.
And again, we don't have the information in front of us right now. And so it doesn't, I obviously still want to get, and I'm going to get back to you, don't worry. But I want to make sure that we understand that we're not debating that right now. It's a request for information. That's all this is. Commissioner McDonough.
Yep, and I get that, and that's fine, I think, but separating it from the process we're at, because I can argue when we got 60% of the folks in our jail that are suffering mental health, we're not doing enough right now. There's pieces of this budget that are not meeting the community's needs, no matter what our perspective is or the priority. Pieces connected to racial equity in the correction system, in the human service system. We are not ever going to be able to meet the needs fully within our community. And I'm getting concerned here that we're going to start picking pieces out of the budget and putting a higher importance on them. And if that's what we're going to do, then we're going to open up that conversation for everybody around this table to raise those issues about where those gaps are and what we need to do. I think the conversation around housing is extremely important and what it looks like going forward for us. I get a little more nervous when we start attaching it to the budget and to the budget timeline for 2020-21, because I can be prepared to come forward with a lot of issues that we're missing right now, and we can really start bogging this process down about where we go.
Well, and that, with all due respect, that's what the addenda process is for. So any one of you, or I, can bring in anything we want in that process. But I think that this particular one, and I guess to be blunt, Commissioner Montes Castillo is new, and just like a lot of our department heads are new. And so the process, I felt that it was important that you at least get the information that you need. And where we go from there. And I get it. But this budget was started, the process was started in like February, correct, of this year?
November.
Last year.
Oh, last year, okay. Well, so I'm just trying to make sure that we get the information and figure out where we want to go forward. And if others do have ideas or things that they want to bring forward, I would do the same thing for others. If you had something specific that you wanted information on and you asked to have that brought forward, well, I have other things that you've asked for information to be brought forward on, and this is Commissioner McDonough.
So I need some clarity here to get an understanding. Is this in relationship to the proposed 2021 budget? Or is this in relationship to how we're moving forward as a county in areas where we have huge gaps and we want to get a better understanding of what our role is? Because that's two different things. If it's connected to the budget of 2020 and 2021, or if it's related to this ongoing work that we do in the county of really trying to get an understanding of what solutions are for us to do better in areas where we see gaps, that's another process and another timeline.
And my answer to that is it may be either. Because I don't know what this information coming back is going to be. And if Commissioner Montes Castillo wanted to use that in the addenda process, she could. If there isn't anything there, or we don't, obviously one commissioner can't do something on their own, but I don't know. But I'm trying to give that opportunity, since this is something that I know and has been talked about as our priorities, and trying to get a better grasp on that to see what it means. I mean, we have to have information in time for that, the addenda process. So that probably isn't going to, I'm trying to be respectful of everybody, and if there is something that you want or anyone wants to be brought back that may lead to some other action, I've had other things that have come forward that are not as specific as this, or maybe more specific, but that would possibly lead a commissioner to making an addenda, whether it's on, I mean, today it was about the Minnesota landmarks, the libraries and the fines, the portfolio for property management. All of those things could impact the budget, and all of those things just today have been asked for an explanation of the vacancy factor. I mean, there's all things that could impact it. So is this a little bit different than that? Yes, it is. But we do have a new commissioner, and I felt that we should at least entertain that and to have the information. And quite frankly, if an addenda is brought forward, I would rather know about it ahead of time and get the information shared with all of us.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Commissioner McGuire.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate your
I'm sorry.
work, your wanting to move forward, obviously respecting everyone's questions and everything. And I just want to recognize the great strides that your department has done. I mean, we've never had a department before. I mean, we had people working in this area, but it was always in partnership with our communities. And we have recognized this huge issue. And we always have known that affordable housing is a huge issue. And we've been working with our communities on that. And now we've actually added an entire department headed by Director Collins, and I just appreciate all the work that you've done and all the work that your department has done to get us to this point and moving forward, that you do recognize the need we have for affordable housing and what we can do with our communities to help them get better tools. We need better tools, they need better tools. We actually have to get legislation for some of these tools. I mean, we have work to do, which we've actually tried in the past. And I know that we're going to be doing that in a systematic way. And I think it's never that we have a non-wavering desire and support for more affordable housing in this county. And I think we all share that. And I think it is just moving forward in the best way that we can. And if we can have a workshop to help us see some of that, I'm all for it. But I just want to thank you for the work that you've done thus far, and just support you and moving forward. And we're going to keep pushing. I mean, we're going to just keep asking, okay, where's our affordable housing? Where's our work with our communities? And I know that you're up to the task. And I'd say your animal symbol would be like an eagle, you know, soaring high and doing all of this. Yeah, so I'm going to give that to you. And I thank you for all of your work in your department.
And just so Mark knows, you're going to be a deer.
Yeah.
Just giving it up front. Commissioner Carter, did you have a comment?
No, I think Ryan.
Oh, Ryan. So I keep forgetting. Go ahead.
Okay. Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for that conversation so far. I just wanted to add a couple of points to the conversation. First, on the piece around, I think we're having a supply side conversation about affordable housing right now and leaving out the demand side. And I think it's important to evaluate the relative trade-offs to both ends. And I don't think it's comprehensive to have a conversation about half of it. And so
Yes.
On Monday, you're going to have a conversation with Health and Wellness about a $1 million reallocation within that budget, which is a big investment in this budget around discharging people into homelessness, creating a housing office, the focus there. And the part I just want to bring to the table here so we don't lose it today while we're talking about EGCI's budget is, if we are not doing that work, there is nobody else to do that work. And that's not to say one is better or worse, but it needs to happen hand in glove. In the conversation with my peers last week at the regional conversation, the piece around how sometimes the supply side can crowd out conversations on the role counties play and vice versa, the role of the state and the need for a massive investment here as well. And I will cede the point very clearly that our tools around the supply side are relatively limited. We can talk more about that in a workshop. And we can also look at the tools others are using across our region right now and where we're trying to orient those tools. I look forward to that piece. And bringing back a conversation that I think we've had for about 6 to 12 months. I never want to decouple the supply side conversation from the demand side, while also saying on the two major redevelopment projects that Ms. Collins mentioned already, two of the largest ones happening in our region, both have supply side responses to affordable housing built in. And in many ways, those are multi-million-dollar significant investments. We need to get across the finish line. I realize we have partners on both projects. But again, I just want to bring that piece in as well. So I hope that's helpful context to the conversation.
Well, and I also think that the riverfront redevelopment going on and the developer coming back to us, and but at our last update, getting the housing trust fund, I think it was $5 million, is also something that is part of this conversation as well. So we'll at least get it started as we move forward. Is there anything else? Okay, then we will move on to Mark McCabe and Parks and Recreation, which is on page 168.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. I'm Mark McCabe, and as I often say to anybody who will listen, that I've got the best job in all of Ramsey County as the Parks and Recreation Director. So thank you very much for that privilege and opportunity to serve the residents of Ramsey County in this capacity. I was also thinking on the way up here that I'm always last on things, so I had the board workshop last week, squeezed on time. We're running over right now, so maybe there's a different message that the county manager is saying. Keep Mark's time short. Get him out in and out briefly. But yeah, best job by far in Ramsey County. Way better than Public Works Director. So. But I do want to also echo thank yous, as many have done before me. Thanks to the finance staff, the county manager, Joanna Berg as the EGCI director, our team, and the Parks and Rec team as well for their help in putting this proposed budget forward. Definitely working, and I know we do across these different departments with people who are passionate, and that is certainly the case in Parks and Recreation. And I think people bring a lot of their head and heart to this work. So that's an inspiring thing to be a part of, and something that I value a great deal in my work. As I mentioned just last week in the board workshop, this proposed budget, we're working on developing a 21st century park system that we offer a dynamic, community-centered system that provides opportunities for an ever-changing community to engage with inclusive and welcoming parks and recreation facilities and programming. And in this budget, we'll be taking our first steps at developing this dynamic system. As we look at the challenges and opportunities, I do want to highlight that there's a lot of great things that are going on in Parks and Recreation. I think sometimes we focus on all the challenges and need to step back and say there's a lot of good things going on. So Ted mentioned 20 million visitors in or users of the Public Works system, but they weren't voluntary users. So 5 million users in the park system, all voluntary, happy to go out and use that system. So that's a lot. That's significant, and that's a lot within our regional park system, where we have large facilities and a lot of opportunities for people to get out and recreate. We're really rated well in terms of customer satisfaction with our golf courses, arenas, our park facilities that we have. People love those facilities. They experience many significant life-changing events in those facilities and have multi-generational connections to those facilities. Now, Parks and Recreation, as you well know, prevents physical illness, promotes mental health, and really just does a lot in terms of improving people's overall quality of life. So I'm just really, really privileged to come up and have this conversation and talk about this budget today. The budget for Parks and Recreation starts on page 169, I believe. Get into our FTE allocation from 2019. We had to 2020 and 21. We're adding 2 FTEs. As the Deputy Finance Director mentioned, One of those is coming from Workforce Solutions and will be a maintenance and service worker helping to provide facility maintenance for Aldridge Arena, which has really turned into a great multi-purpose facility success story where we're having not only ice events, hockey events, but several community events, cultural events that are taking place in dry floor seasons all throughout the year. And so through that expanded usage and revenue, we'd be able to have offsetting revenue for that facility to fund this staff position. So we're happy about that. Thankful to Ling for giving up the 1.0 FTE. On the other FTE, we've got a project engineer to help us get more direct service and projects done out in our park system. Many will involve maintenance projects that just continue to offer a high level of service to our park users and avoid additional fees from contracting. As far as major changes go, the Deputy Finance Director also mentioned this, but the use of $666,000 or $660,000 from the general fund to cover the loss of revenue from the indoor turf facility at the Vadnais Sports Center that we will not have in place in 2020, but we're looking to get completed for 2021. And happy to report that design services have been procured, as you're aware, and that process is underway right now with the design process. We also have been working with a consultant on the naming rights, proposed naming rights deal, and he's actively seeking out sponsors and working to try and have an agreement in place to achieve our fundraising goals for that facility. A board workshop is scheduled for October 1st to update the board on the progress that we're making on both of those fronts, the design services side of things for the facility, as well as naming rights fundraising efforts. As was mentioned with the 21st Century Parks vision, the first step towards achieving that is the realignment of the golf course portfolio. With strategic investments at the Goodrich Golf Course of $2.4 million and Manitou Ridge Golf Course of $3.7 million for their infrastructure needs and making sure that they're competitive and well-positioned to meet the needs of our residents there. It also calls for the closure of the ponds at Battle Creek Golf Course, which is our poorest performing golf course financially right now. It has lost revenue 8 out of the past 10 seasons as operated. It actually was financed as an enterprise fund, meaning that it was supposed to be self-supporting, pay for its operating expenses, and pay off the initial investment that the county made to build the course. As you're aware, the county forgave $5.3 million of debt for this facility as it was not able to meet those obligations that it was intended to. During that process of the closure, we will be reassigning golf course staff, and I think that's important to note that there's 2 golf course staff that are going to be reassigned, not laid off. So no county employees are losing jobs through this process. They're going to be reassigned in areas of greatest need. So we're happy to report that. And as the Community and Economic Development Director mentioned, we're working closely with the City of Maplewood now and pursuing next steps in partnership to determine how to best move things forward with a development process. One last thing to highlight in the golf course 2018 study that was conducted is that this budget also reflects the dynamic pricing that was recommended in that golf course study. We're able to position our golf courses in a way where we can offer value, standard, and premium golf courses and do so in a way that allows accessibility for people to be able to play the game, doesn't price ourselves out, and also limits competition among ourselves. We're kind of competing with ourselves before the way things were priced. Talked about major capital improvements, again, the Vadnais Sports Facility, the investments at the golf courses. In terms of advancing racial equity, on page 171 within our parks budget, we talk about some challenges and our ability to advance racial equity. I'll say that Parks is also an active participant in the workforce inclusion work and contracting goals initiative. So we do procure a lot of goods and services and feel that we have a lot of opportunity to improve there. In terms of growth, Parks is not a very diverse staff. So 93% of our staff are white, 7% people of color, and so we have huge opportunity to grow there, where the county's overall makeup employees are 65% white and 35% people of color. So there's a big delta there and something that we need to make progress in. I'm happy to report that we have made a lot of progress with seasonal temporary employees. It's been probably an easier lift to make progress there, and starting to see some benefits of that, not only to those individuals that have been able to get jobs, but also, and a lot of this is coming on our aquatic side of things, but people advancing up through the ranks to take on larger leadership positions who are people of color. So we are starting to experience some success in that area. Also, in terms of leveraging the funds that the county manager has set aside for this budget to engage in community development or community engagement work, we're certainly planning on doing that. Mentioned that at our board workshop as well, that we have opportunity to grow in how we engage with the public. We have made some advances there where we're no longer relying on single postcard mailers and things like that to get people out, where we're trying to get out into the community, but need to do better at that, have materials that are in different languages, be able to have people of color helping us engage with the public and community. Another area of opportunity for us is just being able to, again, attract those audiences who are underutilizing the park system, and I think do so in a way that tries to make them the most comfortable and provides them meaningful experiences. And so that may be through facilitated programming. We don't want to replicate anything that's going on in the municipal parks and recreation world, but there are ways that we can, through use of vendors, volunteers, other staff examples or models, I should say, where we can connect people to these park facilities and try to offer them a meaningful experience. As the property management director mentioned, we are in need of an enterprise asset management system, and so we're actively pursuing that along with property management, with public works. We are often asked by our potential vendors, what's the system that you currently use? And we hold up a stack of paper. And so that's our asset management system right now, is either in people's heads or on pieces of paper. And that's not an efficient way to diagnose problems out in the field, address issues, and bring the best service we can to our residents. And finally, in terms of managing change within Parks and Recreation, we all have a lot of change to manage. I would say that I'm trying to focus on leading a department of excellence. And so when I started this past year, one initiative was to meet with every one of our staff. So as we look at the FTE numbers, I think I had 97 meetings. So some of those staff were not totally full-time, and met with each one of them and learned a great deal about their ideas, their thoughts on the department, where we could offer better services. And it was just an enlightening experience. And so it helped me to provide us some direction and see how we can truly strive to be a department of excellence, to mirror the county's mission of being a county of excellence in all that we do. So we're going to be working diligently on making those achievements, executing the 21st century vision steps that we put forward in this budget, and offer a relevant and dynamic program that is not the status quo. We'll work on prioritizing our needs and keep a long-term view in mind, and do the best we can to serve the residents of Ramsey County to the best of our abilities. If you have any questions, we're open to those.
Well, we are running short on time, and I'm going to start, because I think you know where I'm going before I even open my mouth, and that's the ponds of Battle Creek. And so I will say what I need to say as quickly as I can, but I am strongly in favor of keeping the ponds of Battle Creek open. I think that there are a lot of reasons why, and there are also, I need more information as far as why it should be closed. It was not recommended in the report. So I will simply say that every one of our golf courses, every one of our facilities has a story behind where it began. And we did set this up as an enterprise fund. And it was set up on in an enterprise fund based on a study that was done that said it should be able to pay itself back. But that was in 2001. 2003, the recession hit, and it wasn't just the ponds at Battle Creek that was in trouble. There were a lot of things that were in trouble. And so, you know what? It didn't work. It didn't pan out the way we were told, and we hired somebody to do that study. It wasn't off the cuff, but it didn't work. You're absolutely right. And it cost the county $5.3 million. That is nothing to sneeze at, and I get that. But every other golf course has a cost associated with it to begin with. But they weren't set up as enterprise funds. But I think right now we have golf courses. And you talked about how much each one is making, and it's the lowest performing. I get that as well. You know that I asked you right before this meeting for information on, okay, what are our golf courses? There is debt service on every one of these golf courses. And so we need to compare. What I want to do is I want to compare apples to apples to see what the real numbers are. I don't know what they are. So if we could get that information back, that's my ask here. And I guess the other part of this is we really, I understand the need for development. We have 2 areas near the workhouse. Both of these are considered workhouse property, actually, although we are no longer. Since 2017, we have not used it as a workhouse training area, the inmates there. Now, I should say that we have replaced that with some certification programs, and I know that each of us have been to different graduations, so the people are getting jobs. But that is a better use of the funds, and we're always ready to and willing to make changes so that we get the best outcomes for our people, regardless of where they're at. That was a better way to use those funds and to get people into jobs in hospitality industry, in laundry, I can't remember all the others that they have there. So it wasn't that we forgot about training, but it's just being done differently. And again, that's just a change that we made. I have no problem with that. We need to, I think, look at the development that we want to do. It's 88 acres, 54 of which are wetlands, 34 are developable, potentially developable, and we don't even know what the city of Maplewood will or won't allow. But I love the fact that they are going to lead that community engagement so that it's being taken seriously, and we're really going to try to figure out what is best. I hope that we don't abandon, I don't believe that we will abandon the other part of the workhouse property. And I can't remember now if that's north or south of the workhouse. The other plot of land that we're looking.
Madam Chair, it's north.
It's north. Okay.
Yep.
I'm directionally impaired. So, and so I hope that we're looking at that as well. And I know we are, but I hope that we don't necessarily have to have them coupled. Right now they are, and again, I respect that, but I feel pretty strongly about having the golf course there and why it was there in the first place. So, but as I said, I tell people all the time, my parents taught me to do my homework, and that's what I'm trying to do here so that I can get all the information and really figure out what is the best way to move forward for all of Ramsey County. So that basic information coming back to me would be really helpful. I know that a lot of people have asked that question about, okay, what is it really costing us? But again, I really want to compare apples to apples if we can possibly, and I know we can do that. So I'd appreciate that information, and I will take it as fact when it gets to me, because that's what it'll be. Okay, I'm off the soapbox now.
Yes.
Commissioner Modis Castillo.
Thank you. Everyone was praised, and you deserve praise as well.
Yes.
So I want to backtrack and say,
I got an early animal.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mark. You're a wonderful deer galloping across our parkland. You have done a great job. And I really want to praise the work that you've done to create a 21st century park system.
Yes.
Because you really are thinking about and looking at your challenges and being very honest about your challenges, but then also looking at how do we engage community in a real way that's tangible. And so kudos to you. You've done a really great job. Our park system is so incredibly important for our community. It's a public health asset, right? We need to have green spaces to be healthy and to survive, especially with our lack of housing and crowding. People need to be able to get outside, and you're doing that. And so kudos to you for all the work and the innovation and the programs and Tamarack Nature Center. All of it is great. And you're right, there are 5,000 voluntary participants in your programs.
Million.
Right?
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so really, really good. I of course, am at this point in support of your golf redesign at the moment. I think that we have some work. I think the homework is a good idea so that we have true talking points. We've all received lots of emails and calls, and there's a lot of misinformation, and people are all hot and bothered, and they're not listening to the whole picture. And I think you present that really well here. And so I appreciate that. And I hope that we can continue to get this homework and strong talking points so that we all can understand that this isn't just about closing the ponds, but it truly is about the 24th century parks and our economic development and partnership in ECGI, and whether that's housing or jobs or innovation in other ways. But it's also, in my opinion, protecting that wetland space is critical. Our golf courses uses a ton of chemicals to keep those spots green, and we have a really great wetland there that needs to be protected. And I think that in your parks planning, you really look at that, and you're looking at our natural resource side. So I really appreciate that. And so I want you to hear the kudos as well, so you're not leaving here at the end of the day not feeling loved. So you are.
So, thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioner. And yeah, just following up to let you know, as far as communications go, talking points, information that you're requesting, we'll make note of that, and we'll certainly get that out to the entire board.
Yeah, thanks. Commissioner McGuire?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, kudos to you, Director McCabe. I just think, you know, are a huge treasure for Ramsey County. Our residents love our parks. I really appreciate your coordination with our communities, and I know you had Roseville in one of our parks in Roseville wanted to do some programming in our park, so thank you for that partnership with our cities and them providing the programming on one of our parks, and just your willingness to, of course, work with our communities. I really appreciate that. I wanted to call out that just as a point of information for anyone who may be concerned that the active living Ramsey County money is budgeted in 18 but not 19, 20, or 21, that has been transferred to the Public Works budget. Yes. So I don't want anyone to be alarmed that we are not doing active living Ramsey communities, and so just wanted to point that out, that that's the reason there's that it's not going to be in your budget anymore. But you've been always really supportive, and I know that you continue to come to the meetings, and it's a true partnership with Public Works and Parks and Public Health and all of our many of our departments that work on active living. So thank you for that. And I am just going to echo that I would like to see information on our golf courses. I do believe in this whole budget process that as much as we might feel inclined to support some things or not, and we have, and each of our parks and facilities has a constituency, and I'm talking about arenas and golf courses, that we probably shouldn't think about any sacred cows, and this is a really tough conversation to have, and I don't know when we want to have this, but the more that we invest in any of these parks or any of these arenas or golf courses, then the more we continue on in a process, in an entity that we may or may not want to continue on with. So I know we've had many workshops on arenas and golf courses, but I know that this budget calls for, for closing the ponds, but it also calls for reinvesting in other golf courses, and I actually want to look at that. So I know I'll get lots of phone calls, I know, but I think we should not have any sacred cows in this county budget, and that we should make sure that we're investing with eyes wide open in these entities, and whether those are the right investments for our dollars. Within our park system, we're doing a whole park study, and
what recreational opportunities do we want to provide to our residents? So with that, I think we should look at all of our golf courses. And I know we did an arena study, but I may need to have a primer on that again too. So I welcome feedback on that because I know I'll get it, but I just think we should be looking at that. So thank you for all of that.
Well, and I think that applies to, quite frankly, everything we
That's
do.
what I'm saying, everything we do,
everything we do,
I
Okay.
agree. It applies to other things that we
Yes.
do.
Okay.
I agree.
Commissioner Carter.
I
and then
certainly
Commissioner
support
McDonough.
the additional information to confirm the direction we're headed in at lunch today. We're just talking about the fact that some things we do need to continue to do because they're the right things to do, and others we need to discontinue. The differences whether we're in a rut or a groove. You know, is it working for us? Is it something that makes sense? So I look forward to getting that. Also, I wanted to ask about the issue with respect to our arenas and refrigerant. And I'm wondering if this is a drop dead off the end of the earth kind of thing. 10 of our arenas using the R22, which is being phased out in 2020. You know, will it be completely discontinued? Does it phase out, which suggests over a period of time? And how will we know, you know, when we're in trouble? Just any thoughts on the plan for that area?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Carter, we're in trouble if every one of them has a leak and loses all of our R22, and that would be in trouble. But, so to answer your question though, the production of that refrigerant is being phased out, as in like terminated.
Terminated.
Yep, that they are no longer going to produce that refrigerant, and so I think that's the end of 2020. So what we've done is typically if you don't have a leak in your system, you're fine. So it's just a matter of if you have facilities that are broken down, aging, whatever, and you need to make repairs, that's when you need to add refrigerant to the system. As a precautionary measure, we do have a supply of refrigerant on hand to be able to deal with that, and we've looked at how much do we typically consume in a cycle, and kind of projected that forward to say, hey, obviously with us not being produced any longer and us not being in a position where we're ready to upgrade all of our facilities, what's a reasonable kind of back stock to have on hand that we could address the need if an entire system or two went down, and then what do we typically consume? So we're making those efforts to plan and be prepared so that we can continue to run those operations and offer that service. In terms of long-term addressing issues, I think that's something that we need to continue to have a strategic conversation about our arenas. I believe that there will be some of those that we're going to want to make a refrigerant changeover to, and there may be others that we don't, that we are comfortable with continuing to operate with a system that works. And if there's a leak or repair, that we address it at that time without investing millions of dollars to upgrade a system that may be only used on a seasonal basis.
As a practical matter, if we needed refrigerant for all of those 10, how long would you, based on our common usage, think that would last us?
I actually did that math, and I found that there was something like, in the rate of consumption that we use, it's something like only like 660 pounds a year or something that we have to use throughout the year to just maintain our system. And so at that rate, we can operate without major failure for a long time. I think we'd be looking at several years into the future, decade, but that doesn't eliminate the fact that some of these arenas are in need of other upgrades as well. There's fire suppression and ADA and all those sort of things. So we have to really look at what are those facilities, like an Aldridge Arena, for example, that are multi-purpose or being able to meet a wide need, a broad need, I should say. And we know that we're going to continue to make investments in so we can make wise investments in those facilities.
Thank you, Mark.
Commissioner McDonough.
Yep, thanks, Madam Chair. Back to the ponds, I just want to, I think the information that the chair is requesting is good for us to be able to have, but I want to make it clear here that for me, moving forward on the ponds is not just a budget decision, it's truly a policy decision about what our priorities are and what we invest in, and really pushing us to have a conversation about what are the needs moving forward here for our county, whether it's on that site or through the park system as a whole. I've heard you say it, I know I've said it, it took us 40 years to respond to one community with one little Tulu court at Keller, and shame on us. And for us, you know, I'm comfortable investing in Goodrich and Manitou. I think the strategy of having and still being invested in a system that meets the needs throughout our county for various levels or whatever individuals that enjoy the sport of golf, but for us to, you know, continue to fund a golf course because we have in the past, whether it's budget or not, when we've got an opportunity. I mean, I go back to the original conversation, we talked about this earlier. It was a 4-3 vote when we moved forward on that, with 3 commissioners thinking there was other opportunities for us to be able to take a look at that. So, you know, the opportunity here for me moving forward isn't just a budget decision. It's as much about a policy decision. You talk about housing. What does it look like on that site if we free that up and partner, where we don't need to necessarily have the dollars, but we provide an opportunity and we bring partners to the table on what does a mixed income housing development look like on that site? What does it look like on part of that site to meet the needs of communities that we have not addressed? And so for me, it's not just budget and zeroing out dollars on whether Battle Creek Ponds is a viable option for us. It is really about taking the opportunity to look at what's next, the next 20 years for us. And I think ice arenas is the next spot we need to look, right? And we need to take this. I know there's a lot of impatience in so many spots because there's so much to do. But bringing this whole budget together as a holistic document that, you know, in the end is over $740 million, and to making that work in this complex environment so that come December we have a budget we can support and it doesn't collapse on us, I think is going to be really important.
Okay. I'm going to say some closing comments here, and you can maybe say like 2 words because we are over time.
I promise to say thank you.
Okay, 2 words, all right.
Oh, that's the first time that was said today.
I do want to point out that, again, our next budget meeting is going to be on Monday, August 26th. We will go from 8:30 to 4:30 or later, depending on how we do it, with a short time for lunch break. I also want to point out that a lot of questions have been raised about different things that we're doing. We are leaders in this state and in this country when it comes to our budgeting. The 2-year budget model that is performance-based. We don't just put things out there and say this would be a nice thing to do. We measure the outcomes, and it doesn't matter if it's something new that we were doing or expanding what we're doing. We have measurable outcomes in our budget. And that is something that is incredibly important, and I think sometimes gets lost in the process because we take it for granted that everyone knows that, and they potentially do not. So, thank you. This has been a lively afternoon, and I thank you for all of the people that were here that made this, pulled it together, all the information, and some of the laughter that we had in the process. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Well done.